again for coming today to this training. Again, this is going to be a 4-hour training. It's usually a full day, around a 6-hour training. We have shortened it just because of everything. We are going to, in the very near future, this week, we're going to have up our trainings. Also, this is the same manual training that we do every September, except we have done a little bit of shortening to it due to COVID. We've shortened this just a little bit. But in September, we're going to be going back to our full 6-hour training. You guys do not have to attend that. Well, you may want to still attend some of it because we do have some new stuff, some new stuff coming out, not huge major, but we do have a couple of things. But that training will be both Zoom and it will be some in person. All of our Tulsa and Oklahoma County have been canceled due to the locations. It's not from us, and some have very limited seating. We had one that went out to 10, so we went ahead and decided not to have the training at that location. So just so you are aware, we will be having both Zoom or we'll have in-person training. We'll also be mailing out the training manuals. You may not get those until September sometime, but I just wanted you to be aware for the fiscal year, kind of what's coming ahead. Okay, let's see. So I don't know if you guys have a copy of your manual, but inside your manual, we have a page that lists all the consultants, and it's on page 4. And that lists all the counties as well. If any of you are in Oklahoma County, Denise Wieland has retired. She retired, I believe, in February. And Pat Gower will be retiring in September. So someone will be taking her place as well. Leanne, who has taken Denise Wieland's spot, but the other one is vacant at the moment. If you also need any technical assistance, you can call our office, and our office number is listed below. And you can always call your consultant at any time too if you need some technical assistance. We are here available for you at all times for technical assistance. You don't have to wait until the review. We actually like to come out and do technical assistance. We don't like doing reviews. That's not the fun part for us. So just to talk a little bit about the program, is the big thing with USDA is integrity. And we started a couple years ago doing all of our reviews unannounced. So if you're getting a CACFP review, it will be unannounced. If you are getting it this year, it has been a little bit announced due to COVID, but for the most part, they are completely unannounced. And if you are declared seriously deficient through your review, then you are required to take this training within 60 days of your exit conference. And this training is also great for new people as well. Since we have shortened this training, it does cover all the topics that any money can be taken back. So some of the things like we really don't talk about, like the WIC poster or the poster that you hang up. It's all about the items where you could have money taken back that could cause you to be SD. That's how we chose to do it the last 3 months, again, since COVID. And this is usually the second Tuesday of the month just because of the situation. Poor Gary, we have, the whole agency has been using this Zoom account. So it's just been trying to find dates to accommodate everybody, but it's usually, and from now on, it will go back to being the second Tuesday of the month. And then the biggest thing about integrity is that all CACFP records must be readily available for review at the institution at all times. Anybody, including USDA, can come into your institution and they need to be there, and someone has to be able to give them to us. So this is the website. This is the website that you guys will be going to one. This is where you do your claim. This is where you will fill out your new application. And don't forget, your application will roll over in September. You'll have to go out and redo that application for fiscal year 21, which is we're about to come upon. And then this is also where our resource library is located. So we have the application agreement, but the resource library has all of the USDA memos on it, and we have a lot of interactive forms along with this training manual is out there. We mail one out to you, and then it's also located in the resource library, which is located on the left-hand side, and it's kind of a brown, mustard, yellowy panel is where you'll see that. So again, our federal fiscal year starts October 1 and ends September 30th. So whenever you're keeping your records, make sure you keep them from October 1st to September 30th. That's this time frame that we look at. When we do a review, we do it on the last month that you claimed, but we can go back other months if we need to. But again, just like so, for once September 30th rolls around and you have your September records, that can go into your fiscal year 2020 records. So we'll go over some of the basic responsibilities, the required documentation. Again, there's the application for participation. We'll talk about anything, your 2019 application information, again, it has been rolled over and the same thing will happen next year. Just to remind you to make any changes to your application if it's needed. You can go in and make changes at any time. The only thing that you really can't do is, I think, if your license capacity changes and your DUNS number, you have to send that to us for us to update. But if you are changing your times, which could be possible due to COVID, if you're changing anything, you can go in at any time and change your application. And it does need to be updated, because that's what we look at when we come out to do a review. And there is a question on the review that asks about your application. So, or if everything on your application is up to date. I've been out once, I had to go out on, it was a complaint. This was several years ago. And I went out at the time breakfast stated in their application, and that wasn't when they served. They changed their time when school was out. So again, just make sure that you your application is up to date. Again, this is what it looks like if you click into the resource library. At the very top, you see, like at the top, we have at risk, we have the center training manual, we have our family daycare home and stuff information here as well. So just make sure that you're clicking on the right information. And as you can see at the bottom, this is the bottom of it says worksheets. And all of those under worksheets are all interactive forms. Most of them are in Excel, and they'll do calculations and such for you. But just so you're aware that we do have forms that you can use that are interactive. I'm sorry, we had a really good question. So if you, about the chat box, and let me know if thank you about the volume. I'll see if I can get better. My microphone may have been, that hopefully is better. I think my microphone was covered up. And if you need to move your chat box, if you'll just, where it says chat, up by there, it has on the box, up there in that white line, if you just click on it and drag it, you can move it. Okay. So again, all institutions, this is the requirement with USDA, they must be viable, meaning they must be financially viable and financially adequate. So the deal with the program is USDA, the whole part of this program is for you to have more nutritious meals for children. So the thing is the reason you have to be financially viable is in case there's a disruption, and it has happened a couple of years that we did not get the rates right away and you guys don't get paid for a month or two, you guys, it should be no hiccup. There should be no hiccup because you're not relying on our funds for other things other than providing more nutritious meals for your children. The other thing is that you should be capable, that must be administratively capable, the staffing is adequate, and the ability to manage operation compliance. And they also must be accountable. So we have to have program accountability. So this is if you're monitoring, you're doing training, you're record keeping. These are the 3 top priorities with USDA, including the integrity aspect of it. So the basic responsibilities is what we're going to be talking about today. And it's right now it's the things in red that are highlighted in red are the items that we will be discussing. The other items are in the manual if you need them, and I can answer any questions about it. It's just today we're focusing on these items. So we'll start off with the enrollment form. So just a reminder that the enrollment form does not replace the application. These must be distributed annually, and they must have a signature of a parent in the normal days and hours of care. And we wish that we could use USDA's enrollment form, but we can't, just because that's the main thing, is it doesn't have the normal days and hours in care, which is required by USDA. I will tell you that a really great change that's going to be happening for next year is with the application and the enrollment form. We have approval from USDA to combine them. So next year, the enrollment form and the application is all one form. So do I have any Head Starts in here or any at-risk programs? Let me ask that. So if you are at risk, if you can let me know. So we do have an at risk. Are you an at risk only, or are you at risk and center? Okay, both. I just wanted to make sure. So because if you are just at risk with, say, a school district, you don't have to have an enrollment form or applications. But since you are a center, you do have both. You'll have enrollment forms and applications on the months that you're not participating in at risk. So one thing is, you can, no one at the district, no one at the school, sorry, have schools on the brain, no one at the center can fill out the application. So we talked about the enrollment form, and now we're going to talk about the application. And the application is where you tell if they're free, reduced, or not eligible. But the center cannot fill it out for the parent. The parent has to fill it out. The one thing that you can put on there is like the enrolled children, the children that are enrolled in that program. Again, the application must be distributed annually. If it's not distributed annually, like, so if you're using an application from, say, last year, then that's not a valid application because it's only good until the next fiscal year. And that child, if, say, it was free, they are now not eligible because you have to have a new application every year from a parent. It is not required for the parent to fill it out. If they do not fill it out, those children will go on the not eligible list, but you do hand them out. Again, you cannot require that a parent does fill that out though. We will talk about the ways that you can approve them. One is categorical, that's through like SNAP, TANF, and FITPR, and the other is through family size and income. So with categorical, and I like to kind of show it, but you'll put, we need the full name of the child, that must be an Oklahoma case number, and then it must have the SNAP number. And the SNAP number starts with 6 or 9, it has 6 or 9 digits, and it starts with A, B, C, D, H, J, or T. If you get a long digit, like a 16-digit number, then please ask the parent for their case number. And the case number, again, starts with one of these letters. What we have seen on FITPR, and FITPR is Federal Distribution something on an Indian reservation. I can't remember what the P is at this moment, but that is if a family is getting commodities from a tribe. So I don't know if you'll have any of that in your area, but usually what we see is a social security number on there. So if you maybe see a social security number, that could be what it is. If you see a number that starts with KK, that is not a TANF or SNAP number. What that means that there's a child in the house that is a foster child. So the KK does not, it's not a SNAP or TANF. KK usually does indicate there is a foster child, and so that foster child information does need to be filled out on the application. one thing that a center cannot do is, I know it's very, very tempting, but say a parent doesn't fill out an application, or they fill out an application and they put their income on there and it makes them reduced or not eligible, but you see that they swipe in. So you want to go to the EBT machine and write down that number. You cannot do that. What that EBT is, when the parents swipe in, that is for child care assistance only. That does not mean that they are getting SNAP or TANF or FITBR. So a child may be getting benefits, daycare assistance, but that does not mean that they qualify for free meals. One good example of this is, I know with foster children, if you have foster to adopt, a lot of those children, once they're adopted, they still get benefits. They still get child care benefits, but a lot of times the families do not qualify for free meals based on their income. So they may write a number down and they may be getting SNAP, and it may be the same number as the EBT, but just because they're swiping in does not mean that that family gets benefits. So don't, you can ask the parent if they get benefits and to write it in there, but don't go to the machine and just write that number down, assuming that the parent gets benefits. So if there's one number located on the form, one SNAP or TANF or FITBR number, then the whole household qualifies for free. Once you see the SNAP number and all the kids that are listed on the application, someone from the household does need to sign it, and that application, again, is free at that point. If there is income listed and a SNAP number or TANF number, you can disregard the income. You used to, years and years and years ago, you did used to have to look at the income, but now you just look at to make sure they have a SNAP or TANF number starting with the correct letter with 6 or 9 digits. And then after that, if it is correct, make sure the parent signs it, and then everybody is free. Foster children. So foster children are considered categorically eligible. So if you've been doing this for a long time, if a family had a foster child, that foster child used to have to be on an application of their own, because they are considered a household of one because they are awarded to the court. That has changed several years ago, that foster child can now go on the family they are with. It can go on their application. The box that says foster child just needs to be marked, showing that that child is foster. That foster child is automatically free. Now, if there are other children in the household located on that form, they have to be approved either by SNAP or by income. They are not automatically free just because there's a foster child in the home. And one big question that we get quite a bit is about about guardianship. So guardianship is not a foster child. I mean, we're not going to make you get documentation, but if a parent's like, yeah, I just have guardianship over the child, that is not, they have to be awarded to the court system, not just a guardianship. A guardianship would go based on the household's income or SNAP. So on income eligibility approval, again, they'll list all the name of the enrolled children, names of all the household members. On the names of all the household members, if a household member does not have income, check the no income box. That's kind of a big thing with USDA. So just make sure if the parent can check that if they don't have income, or they can write 0 in there if they don't have income. They will list the gross amount before taxes on the application. The parent or an adult needs to sign that application, and then they need to list the last 4 digits of their social security number. Or there is a box stating none. They can check that too. But one of those if it's going to be by income, we have to have the last 4 of the social, or the box that's checked that says no social. So just a reminder, we've had this happen several times. if you look at this slide, at the very top, that is the income scale that you'll use to approve the application. At the bottom, there's a little box in the back of the application, and it has the reduced rate. You do not use that scale. We had a lot of people that were approving based on that scale. That was just required to be on there by USDA. But you need to use the scale that's located on page 246. So if you see a P in the little blue box on the slide, those are the page numbers that you can go to refer to some of the things that we're talking about today. Do you guys have any questions regarding the application, regarding SNAP or TANF? I may get a little choked up here today. They're working on our roof, and the smell is very strong today in our office. It's very strong. I can usually handle it. Okay, so no questions regarding the application in the enrollment form. All right. Oops, I'm going. Let's see. So just a reminder that if you have a household that has multiple incomes at different variables on the application, that you do have to convert the income to annually. So if you have a parent that gets paid once a week and then you have a parent that gets paid monthly, you'll have to do the one that gets paid weekly, multiply that amount by 52, the one that gets paid monthly, multiply that by 12, and then add those together to figure out where they're at on the income scale. Now, if you have two parents that both get paid twice a month, you can just add the twice a month up together and then go to the eligibility column and look at that. You do not have to convert it annually if they both get paid at the same rate, which is really nice. So the new, if you're wanting the new application for kids, to parents to fill out, it is located online right now in the resource library under, I'm trying to remember, I can't remember if it's getting under items getting started, but that application is out now. Now, if you're talking about the application that you fill out to renew with our office, the online application, I think September 1st, and it could even come out earlier than that this year. So luckily, but you can, usually the new application does come out in July for the kids to fill out, for the families to fill out. And anytime the new application comes out, you can start using that new application for kids. What I would tell you to do is so say you have a new child that this is what I would do if it was my center. This is what I told my centers to do. If you have a new child that comes in when the new application comes out, say right now, they come out, a child starts tomorrow, give them that new application. They'll fill that out and make a photocopy of that application and put the photocopy with the 2020 records and then the new application with the 2021 records. Because it's actually good for the last part, because it's the new application. It's good for the last part of this year, and then it'll be good for all of next year. But for your other children, you may want to wait until September to get the application out to the kids. Just my suggestion. But a lot of my centers had a lot of luck with that. But just make sure, again, if you use the new application now, to make a photocopy of it, because they don't have to fill out another one again because they already filled the one out with the guidelines. Just make a photocopy, put it in the old records, because what happens is, say we have to go back and look at records from last year for just some random reason, we're not going to show that kid's application if you just moved it forward. So we need to see it in both stacks. Okay. So if you do not have a complete application, that child will go on the not eligible list. So every child in your center must be on a list. And if you don't receive an application, or if it's not completely filled out, again, that child goes on your not eligible roster. An incomplete application is denied. And if you are if there is something missing or something that you can't read or something that doesn't make sense, we need more information. If you can't make sense out of it, we can't make sense out of it. So you can contact the household. You can talk to the household, like for instance, let's say they give you that 16-digit number and you need their case number. You can call them and said, hey, can you give me your case number? You can write it on the application, but you do need to notate that you talked to them. And it can be on the application, just put talk to mom, this date, got SNAP number. The only thing you cannot do is you can't sign it for them. The parent does have to sign it. But just again, make sure that if you have any questions, you can write on it, but you do need to make documentation or notations about what you wrote on it and why, and who you talked to. So again, for no income reported, they need to have like a 0 or that no checkbox marked. Just because they leave the whole thing blank does not mean that it is an application that's a free application. Because if there's 0 income, they write 0, or if they check the box that says no income and they put their social security number, then that can be a free application, meaning that no one in the household has income. But if it's just left blank, it's not a free application, because a lot of times you may see it that says NA. Parents do that at school all the time, just write NA or just leave it blank and send it back in. But just because it's blank does not mean that it is a 0 income application. If you do feel like a parent has left some information off, you can definitely ask them, like, you know, maybe they're saying, I don't have income, but they're coming in every day in a Sonic shirt and look like they're going to work. You can definitely say, hey, I think you may have left off some income on here, and you can definitely ask them about that. So at the bottom on the back of the application in this little gray box, that is for you, the center, to approve. So if you get it, when you get an application back from a parent, someone from the center has to sign and complete the box at the back. You are called the determining official, and you have to tell us the date that you approved it on. That application is not valid until that is done by the center. So if we come out and all those are blank, there's no signature from the center, then all of those kids are supposed to be not eligible, because it's telling us that you did not approve the applications. So just a reminder that you have to sign the back to tell us how you approved them and date it on the date that you approve it. So USDA gives a little bit of flexibility when it comes to the effective date. As a center, most of you, and I'll tell you why, you're gonna probably approve it the date the parent signs it. You can't flip back and forth. You have to make a decision at the very beginning of the year about, is it going to be when the effective date is when the parent signs or when you sign it. And the reason I'd probably say that it's gonna be by the date that you sign it, or by the parent signs it and dates it, is because say it's June 30th and you have a new child that comes in, or a child starts, you get the application on June 30th. You're on vacation and come back July 6th. Well, you approve it July 6th. If you approve it by the date that you sign it, then that child would have been not eligible, say in June, but then would have been whatever you stated they were in July, because that's when you approved it. But if you do it by the date the parent approves it, then that month of June, since it was June 30th, that child would have been whatever it was determined based on that date. That's a very good question about, by taking this class, does that make you eligible to be a designated signer? Actually, that is up to the center. You don't have to have this class to do that, but this class is very helpful to learn, you know, kind of how to approve. But whoever, it's anybody at the center that the center approves to sign. So we don't care who it is, as long as there's somebody at the center, and whoever the center wants to do it can sign the application. So we do have some definitions. This comes up periodically. I won't talk in depth about this at all. I'll just basically give you page numbers. But if you guys ever have any questions, or if a parent has any questions about what's the household size, look at page 17. Determining the household income, those are listed on pages 23 through 26, and any income exclusions on page 27. An example of the household size is, say a child is in college. Do they get to be counted on the application or not? And they are, because they're still part of the household. They are just away at school. The determining the household income, it talks about like if you are a foster parent, you do not have to list the money that you receive from DHS. And then any income exclusions would be like any lottery money that you might win, what you do or do not have to include on that. And again, I kind of went over what they were. So once you approve the children based on the application, again, every child in the center must be on a roster. So when we come out and we're looking at attendance records, we're going to look for every child being on the free, reduced, or not eligible roster. Does anybody have any Head Start children that attend there or are a Head Start facility? That works. Okay. And this doesn't happen very often, but you may have a child that, say, doesn't really participate in your program. Let's say that you have a child that the parent brings all the food because they have a lot of allergy issues. And it's just easier for everybody to, for the parent to bring the food. That child still has to be on a roster because they're on your attendance records. But they do not need application. They don't need any paperwork because they are not participating in the program. So what we've told people to do is just put them on the not eligible list, and then where you mark for that they participated for the month, just put NP for not participating. So again, we just need every child to be on a roster, and if say they don't participate, they still need to be on there, but you can just put NP. Okay, so we have some kids that do attend a Head Start. So if you have any children that participate in a federally funded Head Start class, and it doesn't have to be at your facility, just even at a different facility, those children can be automatically free. We've had some issues in the past with the Head Start program filling it out, but there is a form in the manual, and I need to find it. I'll try and find what that form is. Okay, we'll actually be talking about it here in just 1 second, but since I'm thinking about it, I want to talk about it. So if you have kids that go to a Head Start, it has to be a federally funded Head Start. You can give that Head Start in this form, and the Head Start fills it out with all the children that are enrolled in that federally funded Head Start, and they can give that back to you, and those children are automatically free. You do not need an application on them. However, it's just the children enrolled in the Head Start. So if they have a sibling, the sibling would still need to have an application. And then the kids would also have to have the enrollment form as well. So just to kind of clarify on that a little bit with Head Starts. But like I said, I've had some, and maybe you only have like a couple. It's not worth trying to get that list from them, or they're already on an application from a parent. That's fine. You don't have to have that list, but we're just letting you know that you can get a list from Head Start. And then again, I'll show you the form, and then you can have them sign and date it. So rosters. Well, and actually, I think I may have skipped past the Head Start when I thought that I had it. But the Head Start form, for all of those that have it, there's a completed one on page 37, so you can see what it looks like. But the blank form is on page 247 in the back in Institution Originals. So. Talk about rosters. Okay, you must have a roster and attendance for regular meals and attendance records for at-risk meals. So you only need the roster if you are doing regular meals. You do not need a roster if you're doing for your at-risk meals. When you're reporting your free, reduced, and not eligible numbers on your claim, you should only count the free, reduced, and not eligible from your regular meals roster. If you do at risk, those are all paid at the free rate. And again, that's only when school is in session. So when school is not in session, then those children go back to regular meals. And I know this year's been weird with all of that, but just a reminder. And you may have children that are enrolled in the at-risk program and the regular CACFP meal program. These children could actually be counted in both categories, regular and at-risk. And an example of that would be is like during school, it may be spring break. You can still claim them 2 meals at risk, and then the 1 meal that you would count as at your center. So it'd probably be like breakfast, maybe at your center, and snack and lunch with at-risk meals. So again, at-risk children are all fed at the free rate. So we don't really have to have a free roster, but we do have to have attendance records for your at-risk children. And again, on the months or on times that they are on regular meals is when they need to be on the roster. It's just kind of helpful to put them on the roster. Even when you're doing at risk, because when they have to go back to regular meals, they're already on that roster. So again, if you're doing regular and at risk, you must keep separate records. You have to have records for at risk, and you have to have records for your regular meals. And then on the forms, we have put boxes on there so you can check which is which to make it a little bit easier. And again, at-risk meals are only allowed during the regular school calendar year. So what that means is, when I said spring break, is school is still technically in session. It's usually August through May, essentially, is when you can do it. But Christmas break is allowed, spring break is allowed, but summer break is not, because the school calendar has ended. Okay. Again, all forms must be maintained daily by month at each site for any institution participating in the CACFP program. And all records must be kept on site at the location approved on the institution's application. We understand if you're multi-sited. Do we have any multi-sited, that anybody that has multiple sites? Or are you just single-sided, just have one site? Because we understand that if you have multiple sites, you may have one place where all the records are kept for both centers. Like every day you keep it at each center, but at the end of the month, you may take all of them to one center for records to be stored. But I can tell you right now that we do look at where the records are stored. We'll look in our application, but I do know one place, it can't be at your house. It has to be like at a center or something like that. Like we've had people, like we won't really allow, or they're like, no, I want to keep all the records at my house. You can keep all your past stuff at your house, but current stuff needs to be located on site, because that's where we go to do the review. record keeping. How many meals do you guys serve at your center per day? 3. Perfect. So it's 9:16. How about we take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll get started on the rest of these record keeping forms. 4. Okay, that's what I needed to know to make sure somebody was doing how many they were doing. Okay, perfect. So let's take a 10-minute stretch break. Get something to drink, stand up, do what you need to do. So about around 9:25-ish, we'll start back. I'm going to quickly try something while we're it's not going to work. Okay, well, is everybody back? Go ahead and keep going. So we're talking about record keeping forms. So every institution must keep attendance records and meal count records. So if approved for more than 3 meal services, it must be documented. And it must be documented so you can serve more than 3 meals per day. But if you serve more than 3 meals per day, every child is only allowed to be claimed for 3 meals per day, for 2 main meals and a snack. So you have to have records showing us that even if a child ate all 4 meals, they can only claim 3 of those. And we do need to see that the child was there. Like, so if you have a child that ate at breakfast, but you're not claiming them for breakfast, we need to see that they were there and ate for breakfast. Because if you had 20 kids for breakfast and say you're claiming 9 of those 20 kids, you still fed 20 kids for breakfast, and we still need to see on the production records that 20 meals were served for those 20 kids. So it shouldn't be just like, well, I'm only going to claim them for these, so I'm only marking them down for these. And not just that, but say the child is usually there for 4 meals, and you usually do not serve, they're usually there for supper, and so you don't claim them for breakfast. Well, they left early that day and didn't have breakfast. So you need to mark down every meal that the child was there, but then you also have to show us what meals you claimed. And we'll kind of talk about that here in just a moment. So we have our daily record of meals form on page 55. We have attendance, or you can use your daily attendance. If you're a small center and you want to use, say, you only serve 3 meals per day and you want to use your time in, time out sheets from DHS, we're definitely fine with that. If you're just bigger, though, you may want to keep a daily attendance record just because it gets a lot easier for us and for you guys to read it as well. On page 57 you can use arrivals and departure times. But just to note too that we can always ask for any information from like DHS or any other state agency as well, just as they can ask for information from us. So just again, we have some of our consultants that they just prefer to look at DHS's time in, time out sheets or look at DHS information online. So, and that's fine. Just to let you know, we can do that. But again, you have to have a way to make sure that children are not being claimed more than 3 meals per day. So we have the meal count worksheet, which is located on page 51 and 52, which one page is just the instructions. And then we have the daily record of meals served form. We call it the DROMS form. Now the DROMS form is the common one that most use when you have more, because it's the one that lists every meal service, and you put the child's name and it lists every meal service, and then you mark out the meals that the child ate. So if you do have, and you mark them down for 4, you would just at the end of the month circle the ones that you don't use, or the ones that you're not going to claim. Or I've had some that they highlight the ones that they're going to claim, and then mark, so that way the ones that are not highlighted are the ones they're not going to claim for that day. But anybody can use, if you have only 3 meals per day, we have some that really like the DROMS form. We did make one, and I believe it's out in worksheets that is just for 3 meals. So if you do say breakfast, lunch, and snack, then you can still use that form. It's just condensed, because some people do like to say, yes, this child was here for breakfast. Yes, this child was here for snack. And then it actually calculates for you, because that's the only hard part with those forms is the calculation part. If you use the DROMS form, the daily record of meals served form, that counts as an attendance record and as a meal count worksheet together. But if you just use attendance worksheet and then a separate meal count worksheet, you can do both as well. But the DROMS is kind of all in one. Does anybody have any questions thus far about the meal count worksheet or the daily record of meals form? I'm gonna see, just gonna try and show my screen, but let me see if I can. No, it's not gonna let me do it. I'm gonna try and, I have a document camera. I'm just having all kinds of issues today. Nothing's going to work right for me. So I have a document camera. I was gonna show you what the form looked like, but I cannot pull it up right now. So we have no, so the form that is for all-in-one, all-inclusive is called, we call it the DROMS form, which is the daily record of meals form. And I'll type that in. And there's one out there. We may have pulled it because it got messed up. The form got a little bit messed up, but we did have one that was for like 3 meals, and it had like 16 tabs on the bottom. I had a daycare that had like 16 rooms. It was a very large daycare, and they like to use that form, even though they only serve 3 meals per day. So it is really nice. But we'll see if it's still out there. If we can't find it, we'll see if we can work on it some and get it back out there. So the other big thing with the record keeping, and this is actually everybody's favorite form that we have out there that's interactive, is our food purchasing form. It must be used for all to itemize all receipts for the month. So, or for that purchase, but you keep them by month. So with this form, you use it for like places like Walmart, Crest, Brahms, all of those locations. Now, if you're using a vendor like Benny Keith, Cisco, US Foods, any one of those type vendors, and I don't remember about Sam's, I haven't seen their printout sheet in a while, but if you're getting it from a place that has a very itemized receipt, like a vendor, you do not have to keep the itemized form. And the reason why is because those will tell you like you bought 4 cases of whole milk, 4 to a case. It's very detailed. The only thing that we do need you to do on that is separate any food and milk purchases, and then say if you have foil or anything like that, kind of split up what is what. But if you buy from, say, Walmart Crest, you do need to use this food purchasing form. We have to have the original receipt attached. You can make a copy of the receipt, but we still have to have the original receipt. We understand they fade. That's one reason for the itemized for the food purchasing form, but also because sometimes we don't know what that means. We don't know. So I saw a receipt. And they called Walmart. The receipt said like XP2525. And we're like, what is this? And why is it on here? Because what we found out, it was ink. So what you need to do is you can put like ink and then put like XP2525. Like, you can tell us what it is, but we also need to know what the actual item is to make sure it's creditable. So everything on that itemized form, on the food purchasing form, there's a place for food and milk. There's a place for food related supplies, and then there's a place for other. And that other are things that are not being counted towards the program, things that are not allowed. Pop, sweets like a donut or a cookie, anything that you're using that's not used as a reimbursable meal. That total on that food purchasing form should match the receipt. It may be off by a penny, and that's because of the taxes, but it should match the receipt. And again, that is on one of our interactive forms. That's one of our most popular interactive forms because it does do the calculating for you. Right here, it talks about record of donated products. In case you have anything donated, I will let you know right now that that is going away, that we are no longer it will no longer be allowed to use anything donated on our program because we are giving reimbursement for meals served. So just a heads up, that's one thing that will be eliminated coming up for the next year. So after you do your food purchasing forms, or you have all your receipts for the month, what you will do is you will put them all on your expenditure reimbursement worksheet. We can only look at receipts from the current month. So if it's right now, we just finished July. So when we come out, you'll have every July receipt on your expenditure reimbursement worksheet. You can also add your administrative and food service labor. Again, you'll add your food purchases, maybe some non-food purchases, which would be like foil and stuff, and any miscellaneous expenses. And an example of, say, a miscellaneous expense could be maybe your microwave broke and you bought a new one. You can charge that off to child nutrition, or your mixer broke, or you bought a new pot and pan. Anything like that can go on there as well. Anything that's used for our program. So we talked about two things. One, about the financial viability. So when we come out to do review, we look at your profit loss. We make sure that you as a center or a place, that you guys are financially viable, that you do not need our funds to keep your doors open. But the other flip side of that is what this does is the expenditure reimbursement worksheet. So when we say you have to be in a for-profit and a nonprofit status. So what that means is, again, when you're financially viable, you are in a for-profit, unless you're a nonprofit organization, but your center as a whole is financially viable to stay open. You don't need our funds to stay open. You can manage without our funds. The other flip side is the reimbursement we give you. So say we give you $1,000 a month in reimbursement, you should be spending all that funds and or more funds on the money that we give you. So if we're giving you $1,000 a month, you should be spending that and maybe plus some on these expenses, on labor, on food, on non-food. We understand some months you may spend more, some months you may spend less, but USDA allows what we call a 3-month operating, meaning that you should, within 3 months, you should be at least we call it in a negative, because we want you to be spending the money on the program. It has to be spent on the program. So if you look and you're like not spending enough on our program, buy better quality of food. I mean, we've had some that have tried adding steaks to stuff, which I was like, that's awesome. But you can, if you're not adding your labor in, you can add your labor in. Maybe you need some new pots and pans, you can buy some pots and pans, but you do have to spend the reimbursement that we're giving you back on this program. I hope that makes sense, because it gets confusing when we talk about being for-profit and nonprofit. Again, we understand if you're a nonprofit entity, you're not supposed to be making a profit. When it comes to the profit loss, when you're financially viable, that's a different issue. But on our program, all the money that we are giving in reimbursement should be all spent on our program, if not more. And anything that cannot be charged off to the program should not be on here either. It's only for things used for CACFP purposes. So an example, and you can prorate, and it's something that you may prorate would be like paper towels. Say you're going to the store and you buy paper towels, but it's for the whole center, it's for the kitchen, and it's for all the rooms. Well, you can't just charge that off to child nutrition, because it's not just used for child nutrition. It's used in the rooms for kids washing their hands and anything else like that. But what you can do is, we have some that they're like, okay, child nutrition uses a third of it. So you can say, you can take the price and say multiply it by a third, and that's what you're going to charge off to child nutrition. Or we've had some that's like once every 3 months when they buy paper towels, they'll charge it off to child nutrition. But if it's used for the whole center, or if it's not used for CACFP purposes, it can't be on the, you can't charge it off to child nutrition. We call it charging off, meaning that you're saying that you're spending it on our program when you really didn't. Like, we can't see toilet paper on there. We can't see candy bars. Like, that stuff's not permissible. It's not allowed by USDA. So you can't say, oh, this was a CACFP expense, when it's not allowed on the program. So inventory. So inventory is not required, but it is very highly, highly suggested. So what we talked about is we can't look at receipts from a previous month, but we can look at your inventory. So the biggest one, and that's why it's highlighted, is the end of the month milk inventory. So if you buy milk every Tuesday, and say you buy 20 gallons every Tuesday, well, let's say June 30th was that Tuesday, and you buy 20 gallons of milk, and you had 18 left over, and then come July 1st, you're short 5 gallons of milk, but you bought all the other milk because you bought some the day before. Put it on a milk inventory. You can put it on the fridge. It's a 1-page paper that we have that's located in the manual, and all you do is at the end of the month, like on the last day of the month, before you go home, you just tell us how much milk you have left in your fridge, because you're going to use it. So if you have 6.5 gallons, write 6.5 gallons, and then we can use that in the next month. It's also great with your food and stuff as well, is to use your inventory sheets. We have some in here. No one does commodities anymore, but it was required for commodities. But again, because what we can do is say that you bought hamburger meat, and say that you bought 10 pounds of hamburger meat, but on your production records, you're showing us that you had 20 pounds, you used 20 pounds of hamburger meat. Well, to us, we can do this. If we see a lot of consistency, we can be like, but we don't have the receipts. I mean, I've been to centers where they told me they used 20 pounds of cheese in a month, and there's not cheese once on the receipt, or that they had apple juice every day and there was no apple juice on the receipts. So if it's not on the receipts, we can take that back of what you don't have. And like I said, if you have an inventory, we can go by the inventory. But a lot of times, if you're literally saying that you bought 20 pounds of cheese, or you're using 20 pounds of cheese, and there's no cheese at all purchased for the month, I'm just going to let you know that we can go back and ask for your inventory. It doesn't happen all the time, but we have seen stuff like that they were serving something that they said they were serving, but that's not really what they were serving. And again, all receipts must be available for review purposes. And then starting in October, no donation forms are accepted. They can donate, it's just you can't use it for the reimbursement. It can just be an extra. So any questions regarding the paperwork requirements? Because next we're going to start talking about the mill patterns. And okay, we'll just go ahead and keep going. So meals and food components. So we have 5 components in CACFP, and then you must offer the minimum serving size to be a reimbursable meal. You can always serve more food. We have no problems with you serving more food on the program. You just cannot serve less than the minimum requirement. So I have an idea. Does anybody here serve infants? Okay. Okay, we have infants. All right. Yes, the building for the future should still go with the application. What we've told people in the past is to put, if you can put the building for the future on the back of the enrollment form, even though the parents are handing it back to you, is same thing actually this year, the application, even though it's all in one, it's only a 1-page application. So you can even put the building for the future on the back of that application to save paper. But yes. All right. And thanks for those questions, because that's kind of stuff that we're not really talking about. And it's not because we don't talk about it in the training, it's just we were trying to shorten this up some. So any questions, perfect, that you have about our program at all, we will definitely, I want to definitely answer any questions that you might have. Yes, we have been wanting it to be on a one page for a long time. It's really neat looking. It's 1 page, it's both the enrollment form and the application. So it's super nice, it's super easy. So it's wonderful. Now you don't have to have the 2 pages. And what we did do with the enrollment form, which you guys are not a Head Start, is we still have the enrollment form, but it is just for Head Start because they're not required to have applications. Same with At Risk. So we're going to talk about the age groups. We have 1 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 12. We have our at-risk age group, and then adults, and we won't talk about adults since nobody has it. First is the fun grains component. So it is required at least 1 serving of grain per day must be whole grain rich. If a child care center only serves breakfast, the whole grain at that meal service has to be whole grain. So like we have some people that say they're in at risk and they only serve 1 meal, they serve, say, lunch at risk only. We have schools, a lot of schools that do at risk for supper, but since they only serve 1 meal, that 1 meal has to have a whole grain. So one of your meal options at your center must include a whole grain once per day. It's not once per child, it's just 1 meal service per day. And then all the other ingredients must be enriched or whole grain meal, flour, or bran. And that's common. Most of the time when you buy anything, it is enriched. That's usually not a big problem. So if you do not know, we'll talk about like some more areas about how to get whole grain rich. But here's a couple of ways that you can do that. One is the WIC approved. They have a WIC approved whole grain food list that you can just type in WIC approved. If the easiest way, honestly, is if you look at the label and look at the ingredients list. If it says whole something, or it says water, then whole wheat, whole corn, whole anything, that is considered whole grain rich. As long as the first ingredient or the second, but the first can only be water, is the only time. But that's the easiest way. There's one if FDA has the whole grain health claim, but you kind of would have to take the statement with you to make sure it meets. And then I'm not really talking about the meats, the FNS rule of 3. These all get super complicated that even like with us, we have to do calculations and stuff. So I just want to talk about the easier ways, which are the WIC approved list, the label of looking for whole anything, whole grain, whole flour, whole wheat. And then maybe if you have any documentation, like from a CN label or from a product formulation statement. Those are the easiest ways. So again, here's just a kind of a snapshot of what it looks like for our whole grain, the WIC approved list for breads. And I've had some centers that they've just are like, okay, every day I'm going to serve a whole wheat bread. That's just what they do every day. They keep it. They just one meal a day, they give a whole grain piece of whole grain bread. But you can look, there's chips that are whole grain, there's crackers, there's tons of cereals are whole grain. Oatmeal is automatically whole grain. So there's a lot of things that you can do. I feel like this is not, I feel like the whole grain thing is not, it's not as hard as some of the other things can be to serve. So one other pasta is, I see a whole durum pasta. So if you see anything that says whole durum, just anything with whole. Now I know on the one it says breads, it says gram. So gram is a whole grain flour. However, when you buy, just caution you, if you look at the ingredients list in graham crackers, the first ingredient is not graham flour. It's usually like enriched wheat flour. So, but sometimes I think some of them are whole grain, but just to let you know, when you see the word graham, yes, a graham flour is automatically whole grain, but the first ingredient in graham crackers is usually not graham. It's usually towards the end. So here is an example of the ingredients list. And as you can see, is the first ingredient is whole wheat flour. So this will count as a whole grain product. Whatever you're using for your whole grain products, make sure that you are saving a copy of the label or taking pictures of the label or keeping the label. We need to see the ingredients list to show what your serving does meet. If you buy the same type of bread all the time, you can save one of the bags and just save it for the year. Like you don't have to keep saving it every time if you buy the same thing. Just we need it once. Because when we come out to look at it, we're gonna look at your receipts, see what products you're buying, and then we want to see the labels that coincide with that. So again, on your cereals, on any chips, on crackers, on anything that you use as whole grain, for your whole grain, make sure you're saving the label. Your pasta, whatever you're using. There's tortillas. Like I said, there's so many options, but a lot of people choose, most that I know have only done the bread. But there are tons and tons and tons of options, especially the breakfast cereals. So if the first ingredient is a whole grain and the remaining ingredients are either enriched or whole grain, does that make it whole grain rich? And yes, it does. Breakfast cereal. So we talked about cereal and grain-based desserts. So they're no longer allowed. Grain-based desserts are no longer allowed. And then the breakfast must not contain more than 6 grams of sugar per dry ounce. So in the handouts that you would have gotten, there is a chart in there. And in that chart, you should have gotten one for cereal and one for yogurt. And it talks about the sugar content that you can have in there. We have added that to next year's manual. So it does, so that way you don't have to have an extra printed copy. It will be in the manual of how much sugar that you can buy, what you can buy and how much sugar is allowed to be in that product. And then when you look at the bread grains chart, and that there's one on 158 through 159 and 175 and 178. If you look at that chart and if it's highlighted in red, it's not allowed. So the things that are no longer allowed from previous years are like donuts, granola bars, Pop-Tarts, cookies, cake, brownie. They did leave, they had taken out graham crackers at one point and animal crackers. Those are back in. You can do for breakfast pancakes, waffles, French toast. I'm trying to think what else. But it's just, they are trying to really watch the sugar content for our centers. And with your cereal, so what is great about the cereal boxes is if you cut out the side panel, it will tell you, it will show you the nutrition facts label. That's where you get, it shows the grams of sugar. And then if you look at the top, it will tell us the name of the cereal that you're buying. And then it also has the ingredients list to let us know if it's whole grain rich. And it does apply to instant, ready to eat, or hot cereals. And we do get asked the question about like if you have oatmeal and you add sugar to it, you can, we just really say use it sparingly and with caution. But when we look at the packaging that is purchased, it must meet the guidelines in the room. Do you guys have any questions about how to calculate the sugars? Like I said, we'll put the chart in, but that one, the one example chart that we have in the back that has like, say, like 1 ounce can have 6 grams, and then it'll have like, say, 2 ounces and 12 grams. So you can look to see. What you do is you look at the serving size of the container. So say it says 3/4 cup, and then comma, it'll say 1 ounce. So if it says that, then you go down and look at the sugar and see how much sugar is in it. And say if it has 4 grams of sugar, then you're fine. And keep looking, to be honest with you. What most of my centers did to be super easy is they did WIC approved. You can type in WIC approved cereals and it will show you all the ones that are on WIC approved cereals meet guidelines. So if you just want to look at WIC approved cereals, you can do that, and we'll just go by that chart. You don't have to do the math. But, and it could be changing all the time. I know this, I think, I was surprised. I was at a center when this first all came about and they had Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and I was shocked because I was like, oh gosh, this is way over. And it was actually only over by 1 gram of sugar. So you may check some cereals just periodically to see if they lower the sugar content. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, because just 1 gram would make them, it would categorize them, which I was shocked, because to me, Cinnamon Toast Crunch has a ton of cinnamon and sugar on them. But here's another about the WIC approved. The most common ones I've seen with the kids that have the most sugar-ish in it, well, of course, Cheerios is one that kids will eat. Kix, multiple kinds of Kix. Cheerios, multigrain is the most common. So last I saw, Honey Nut Cheerios has too much sugar. So regular Cheerios is fine, but Honey Nut Cheerios is not fine. And multigrain has more sugar. And the other one I've been seeing a lot of is the mini spooners. Is there any other ones that you guys have seen that count that your kids eat, or do you guys usually go by the WIC approved list? But again, just make sure that you have the side panel cut out, because we will see what you buy on your receipts, and then we will need to see the sugar content. So if you just, on that side panel that has the nutrition facts label, is all we need. And you will probably keep everything for about a year. Our schools have been doing this. I mean, they don't have to watch the sugar for cereal, but our schools have been having to keep nutrition facts labels on all their products, I mean, for 20 years. So I know it's a pain, but we do have to have nutrition facts labels for your cereals to see the sugar content, and we have to see at least the ingredient list for all your whole grain items. And just keep it for a year, and then you can throw it away after the year is over, because we really don't need those. We'll look at your new ones. Grain-based desserts. So on page 172 is what will show the grain-based desserts. There'll be the items in red on your grain sheet. Again, these are not creditable towards your grain component. And so you have to take them, remove them from your receipt, or they have to go down the not eligible receipt. You can't put them on your expenditure worksheet. So I'll give a couple of examples just to give you some ideas. Is when this all first came about, we had a center that has been doing donuts for say 20 years and on Fridays, and she didn't want to give that up because that is just a tradition. Her kids loved it, and she just didn't want to stop that tradition, which we understand. So these were her two choices, and we'll talk about the actual meal patterns here in a minute. But her true choices were she could serve the donuts and not claim the meal, just not claim it, serve it, not claim it. And you can do that at any time. I've had a couple of centers that bad days, something's happened, the cook is gone, they've ordered pizza from Little Caesars and just ate it but did not claim the meal. You can do that because it didn't meet requirements. You can do that at any time for any meal. If it doesn't meet requirements, you can just not claim it, and just you can put what you had on your food production records, but just put did not claim, and don't claim the meal. The other thing that she decided to do is, which we were fine with, is she had the donuts, but she had yogurt with the donuts, she had milk, and she had fruit. So the donuts were just like an extra type item. But again, even though it was an extra, she had to put on the receipt, she had to move it down to the section that says not reimbursable, and she could not put that dollar amount on the expenditure worksheet. And I've had some people do that too with CN labeled products. Say you can't find chicken nuggets anymore, but you still want to give your kids chicken nuggets, but they still gave them, say, bread, and then they gave them baked beans for their meat, and then a vegetable and fruit, but just gave them chicken nuggets as an extra. Anything that's an extra that is not creditable or not reimbursable on our program, again, you must take off the expenditure worksheet. I just can't stress that enough, because you can't charge something off to us that is not allowed by USDA. But you can do it. You can give extras. You can do stuff like that. But we just want you to know you just can't charge it off to the program. Okay, so grain-based desserts. These are just an example. We have breakfast bars, brownies, again, granola bars. You can do granola cereal. You just cannot do granola bars. I know it's all the good stuff. I know it's all the stuff kids love, but these are the items that cannot be served any longer. And claimed. Actually, I saw the comment about the WIC-approved cereals. If you literally go to Google and type Oklahoma WIC-approved cereals and just click on that link, because it could be updated. That may be like from our original time that we took a screenshot of it, but just because it's actually multiple pages, it's pages long, but go just type in WIC-approved cereal, Oklahoma WIC-approved cereals, and you can do Oklahoma WIC-approved breads, and it will pull up, and you can just save that, or you can print that out. It'll be much clearer. So we call, again, the Exhibit A, we call that our grains chart. So there's some things, again, that are not easily identifiable. And one is we found is like a breakfast round. Well, if you look at a breakfast round, it also happens to be oatmeal raisin. Well, it's really a cookie. It looks like a cookie, but it's packaged as a breakfast round. We're just saying, please be cautious with that. We would suggest actually you not serve it. Because it does look like a cookie. And the fact that USDA at first took away graham crackers, we just don't want them adding to that list. We want them, so if it looks like a cookie, we kind of say it is a cookie, even though it may be called like a breakfast round, and there's not a breakfast round on the grains chart. If you have any questions about any of this, again, you can always, so we're on the consultant list, and if you know who your consultant is, you can always at any time, if you have any questions, they have, all of them have work cell phones. So that number in there is their work cell. You can text them. You can take screenshots. I've had that before. Someone would take a screenshot, say, of the cereal box. I would ask to see what it, like, just show me what the box was, like what type of cereal, and then show me the ingredients list, or show me the side panel, and then I can help them. You can do graham crackers, but when this originally came out, USDA took graham crackers off the list. They gave them back to us. So you can do graham crackers, but USDA, when this first came about, they took them off the list for the first 6 months before we gave it back. I think that and animal crackers, but they gave us animal crackers back too. So yay, yay. You can still do those. But just like you said, we say be very cautious. You can do muffins. We prefer that your muffins be quick breads more type. We understand if they still do it. I think they do. Otis Spunkmeyer has the muffins that a lot of people buy at Sam's. That is like the zucchini, banana nut, carrot, and chocolate chip muffin. We understand there's a chocolate chip muffin in there. It is a muffin, so yes, you can serve it, but we just say, we also understand it comes in a variety pack and it's just one of them that's in there. But we would say if you're like making them, you would probably use caution. We'd say probably please don't make a chocolate chip muffin, just again because USDA has been so strict with the sugar requirements that we don't want items to be taken away. Oh, I bet you are. I never thought about that. About is it cereals made in a peanut factory? That's hard. Cereal muffin. Oh wow. And that's the thing, you may have to unfortunately make some things or steer away from some items. That's hard, especially if you have someone with a severe peanut allergy at your center. Do you guys have any questions about what we call the grain-based desserts? Or the cereal? One thing I was going to mention, another frequently asked question about cereal is, can you mix cereals? One that has more sugar with one that has less sugar. And I would caution you on that. If USDA comes out with us, I mean, I can tell you right now, they would say, no, do not do that. But what we have allowed is say you have like regular Cheerios in a container and everybody has their serving size, but maybe you have a cup full of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and then the kids can add a little bit of Cinnamon Toast Crunch to their cereal that you already gave them. They can do that. But I've had some that tried putting like the Cinnamon Toast Crunch with the cereal together and then serve it out. And you can't do that because we don't know how much cereal that they're getting that are Cheerios and how much are the other. And again, that other cereal has to be taken off the list because off of your receipt, it can't be claimed with us because it does not meet requirements. But we do get that question asked a lot as well. So what happens if you do not serve something that's whole grain rich once per day? So what happens is we will actually take back a meal with the lowest reimbursement for that day. So if, let's just say the only meal that day that you had was lunch. Say you didn't have a bread at all for breakfast, you didn't have a bread at all for snack, you only served a lunch breakfast, or you only served a bread at lunch, and that bread was a white piece of bread, not whole grain. Then we would take back reimbursement for that lunch that day because that's the only meal that had a bread with it. But say you serve all your meals have bread with it and none of them are a whole grain that day, then we would take back, say, snack. But just make sure that you're serving whole grain once per day. just once per day. That's why I said a lot of people just keep a slice of bread. A lot of them just give it to them at breakfast time, just a piece of toast. But as long as you serve bread once per day or serve a whole grain something once per day, you're fine. And again, you can get it from a tortilla, from pasta, from bread, from cereals, from all kinds of stuff, from chips, from crackers, just once per day. So next we're going to talk about meat alternate. So now soy yogurt does count as one of those meat alternates, and also tofu. I don't know anybody who has done tofu. But one change that you guys, I hope you guys might know, is that you can do, instead of serving a grain for breakfast, you can serve a meat instead, a meat alternate instead. And you can do that up to 3 times per week. So if you have, like when I was talking about the donut with the yogurt, that's what they did, is they used the yogurt as their meat alternate. If a child is supposed to get 1 serving of bread at breakfast, then you would give them 1 ounce of meat alternate at breakfast. It just, that's how, or if they need a half a serving, you just give them, or maybe it's 1 ounce, but 1 ounce of meat is not a whole lot. Like 1 egg is, 1 large egg is 2 ounces of meat. Let me make sure. I can't remember. It's not telling me. I'm sure we'll get into that. Oh, yeah, here it is. Sorry about that. Next slide. So it is just 1 ounce equals 1 serving of meat alternate. And this just gives you an idea about how much you have to serve to equal 1 ounce. And while we're on the topic of meat alternates, we just add this in here because this is a very common thing, especially for newer centers. If you've been on the program, you probably know that we've hounded about it a long time. But imitation cheese, cheese food, and cheese products. Like cheese product is not allowed at all. Cheese food you can serve, but you have to serve 2 ounces. Yes, so would the meat alternate be put on the grains part of meals served at breakfast? You can actually add it to the meat part, that's fine. You can put it in the meat column. We just have to make sure 3 columns are filled out on breakfast. So it can either be your meat, fruit, or milk, or it can be your vegetable, milk, and bread, just as long as 3 columns are filled out on breakfast. But cheese product is just not allowed. And if you can see here, any sliced cheese that you buy that's essentially individually wrapped is a cheese product and does not count the program. Again, cheese food, I have never really seen a cheese food before, but you do have to serve 2 ounces to equal 1 ounce of food. And then there's also imitation cheese. And imitation cheese does not count at all as well. As long as it says, like if it says just pasteurized cheese, it works, but cheese product does not work. Okay, and that's a great question. You can use Velveeta as an ingredient. Yes, you can definitely use it as an ingredient, and you can charge it off because you're using it as an ingredient in your dish. It's just, it won't count as your meat alternate because Velveeta doesn't count. But if you add real cheese to it, or you may have, like, say you're doing macaroni and cheese, you're using Velveeta with your pasta, but then you're doing a hot dog as your meat. So you can use it as an ingredient to make something. It's just, it can't be counted as your meat alternate product. And I've never seen a cheese food for your grilled cheese, because usually people that do grilled cheese, they use the block cheese that's sliced, and it is real cheese, so that counts as cheese. But if you say use the singles like this, that's a cheese product, it doesn't count. You would only be really counting the bread and you'd have to give something else as the meat alternate. And if you have questions about like if your cheese counts or if anything that you have counts, definitely you can email me a picture of it. You can take a picture of it and send it to your consultant as well. We have no problem taking a look at products. I'm going to actually email, put in my email address. So if you have any other questions, again, you can take a picture, email it to me, or again, take a quick picture, text it, or email it to your consultant as well. We're more than welcome. We would rather come out, we'd rather get a text now saying, no, this product doesn't work and why, versus coming out and have to take back meals because it doesn't work. So. Okay. So yogurt is the same as cereal. It has the same requirements in the fact of they watch the sugar content. And then we did send you the chart for your sugar. And again, it will be in this year's upcoming manual of how much sugar can be in it. Essentially, there can be no more than 23 grams of total sugar per 6 ounce. And what I have been finding that I have seen is like Yoplait usually does work. The Go-Gurts I have seen have worked. So again, this question has been asked to USDA, if you can take one with less sugar, like a plain yogurt and a sugary yogurt and mix them together, and USDA says no, you cannot do that. So just make sure that whatever sugar or whatever you're buying, it has the right sugar amount. Now you can add fruit to it. You can make, that's a great breakfast item, is making a yogurt parfait. You can do yogurt with fruit and granola, and you've covered, and then your milk. But have you guys had a lot of issues with the sugar? I know with the cereal it's hard because of peanut butter or peanut facility, but what about any yogurt sugars, or do you guys even do yogurt? I know yogurt can be quite popular, especially with the younger kids. And the great thing about the chart that we sent you in the packet is it does go all the way up to the large container. So it will tell you if that large container, if it tells you how much the whole container has of sugar, it will tell you how much that you can, if it works or not, which is fantastic. So this is, again, kind of how it works. I don't know if any of you, oh, I'm sure it is tricky for lunch, but I know the kids love yogurt. And like right here, it says this has 6 ounces. And if I'm not mistaken, let's see, I do have the chart. Let me pull it up. Looking for that yogurt chart, but this does meet the requirements. This says 6 ounces has 19 grams of fiber, and I believe it had to have less than 21, so it meets. But that's all you do. And again, we have no problems helping you out with that. If you just, again, text us a copy of the nutrition facts label this, and I like to see what product it is, so if you can take a picture of the front of the product, and then I can easily help you with the calculations as well. And again, this is kind of what the chart looks like. It was under 23 grams, so that yogurt we just looked at worked. So in the past, fruit and vegetable component were together. They still are, they still can be for breakfast, but it is now actually, fruit is its own thing and the vegetable is its own thing. Also, one other item that the other thing that money can be taken back for, so one is if you do not serve one whole grain per item per day. You can get meals taken back for that. You can get meals taken back for not serving enough food. You can get meals taken back for not serving a component. And then the other thing that you can get a meals taken back for is if you serve juice more than once per day. So just caution, juice once per day now. Which I think a lot of people have been really, really good about that. If you do a juice, it has to be pasteurized, full strength, and 100% juice. Again, only once per day can you serve juice for it to be credited. And I'm going to give you a little tip and hint. If I have a center, I would serve my juice most of the time at snack. And the reason I say that is because when we look at the meal patterns, so say you have the older kids, the 6 through 12, they require at snack 3/4 of a cup of fruit or vegetable. At breakfast, they only require a 1/2 cup. Well, if you give them, say, a banana at snack, they need 1.5 bananas. But if you give them a banana at breakfast, they need 1 banana, and that way you can give them juice, and that gives them more juice. And you won't have to be serving as many like fresh fruits and stuff like that. So just a little trick. And I'll talk about the banana and, well, so just a trick is, or not a trick, but per the food buying guide, many people get a little not confused, but as a rule of thumb, 1 medium size apple equals 1 cup of fruit. 1 medium size apple, 1 cup of fruit, per the food buying guide. 1 orange, big orange, no, we're not talking the mandarins, 1 orange and 1 banana equal a 1/2 cup of fruit. And the reason why they say is because of all the peeling. So just a rule of thumb, 1 banana equals a 1/2 cup of fruit. 1 medium-sized apple equals 1 cup of fruit. Okay. Something else to give as a rule of thumb is raw leafy greens and dried fruit. So if you do raw leafy greens, like if you're doing a salad, if you give a child 1 cup of salad, it equals a 1/2 cup. And I tell people because it's so fluffy. Like have you ever taken spinach and microwaved it, like 1 cup of spinach and microwaved it? I promise you it's probably less than a 1/2 cup, but that's just their rule of thumb is that whatever you give them, so if you give them 1 cup of raw leafy green, say romaine lettuce, it equals a 1/2 cup of vegetable. On the flip side, if you do a dried fruit, it increases in value. So if you give 1/4 a cup of, say, raisins, it equals a 1/2 cup, because if you reconstituted it, it would grow. So raisins or craisins or anything like that can be served on the program. And then if you serve again, say 1/4 of a cup, it equals a 1/2 of a cup. Now we're going to talk about milk. So just a reminder, for milk, that 1-year-olds between ages 12 months and 24 months have to have unflavored whole milk, unless you have a doctor's note. Ages 2 to 5, again, unflavored, fat-free, or low-fat milk, unless you have a doctor's note permitting otherwise. And then from 6 to 12, they can have either flavored or unflavored fat-free or low-fat milk. You're at risk and your older kids. And I mean a doctor's note is like, say, for instance, you have a 2-year-old who's really underweight and the doctor wants them to have whole milk, you would need a doctor's note for that. If they want the fat content to be different, then we would have to have a doctor's note. So the majority rule of thumb for milk is 4, 6, and 8. And I would say, to be honest with you, do it for every meal service, 468, 468, 468. It does change at snack, but to me, to be just consistent, is I would do 468. It goes 4, 4, and 8 at snack. But just in my mind, it's easy to do 4, 6, and 8 ounces. You don't have to, but I'm just saying you can definitely do that just to keep it easier on you instead of it be like, what meal is this? What do I have to serve? But I do want to caution you. If you pour milk into a container and then pour it into a cup to make sure you're serving the right amount, which I understand, especially when we come out, we understand what it's like when we come out. I've been doing this for a long time. I know USDA audits us and comes out with us. So I understand what it's like having someone kind of watch you while you're serving. But if you see in that black box with the big red X, it has measuring cups. That is for dry, that's for dry items. The picture that you see here, that's a liquid measuring cup. And we used to do this demonstration. But if you pour 8 ounces, so 1 cup is 8 ounces. If you take the 1 cup dry measuring spoon and pour it into a cup, it will actually be about an inch short. Liquid and dry measurements are different. They're not the same. So we do say if you're going to pour into a container, please try to do it into a liquid measuring and not a dry measuring, because you will be short on milk. I've had centers that have been short on milk because that's what they did. They did it every day for a month. And when I came back, they were short on milk by quite a bit because every time they did it, they were about an ounce short that they gave. So just use caution whenever you're measuring, whatever container you're measuring with. And also make sure the cup that you use, if it says it's an 8.5 ounce cup, I would buy at least the 9 ounce cup for your older kids. The 8.5 ounce or the 8 ounce cup, you literally have to pour it to the top rim, not the bottom rim, the top rim. So, and no one's gonna do that because it would spill all over the place. So just make sure that you are using the right size of cup for your older kids. A lot of people will do the 9 ounce cups or the 12 ounce cups just to be safe. That's the other reason how people have been short on milk. And the reason I say all this is because if we come out to do a review and you're short on milk, for that review month, we take back every single meal that has milk in it. And that would be every breakfast, every lunch, and any snacks that had milk served. So I just want to caution you. I've had centers that have been doing it for 20 years, and then I come out, and all of a sudden they're short on milk. And half of the time it was because they either measured with the wrong unit or they were buying the wrong cup size. So when we're talking about there is a transition period for children going from 24 months to 25 months. When you're transitioning them from whole milk to low fat milk, you can do a half and half. Like you can do half whole milk and half like low fat or fat free milk, or you can buy 2% milk. But just remember it's for 1 month only. And then when that child is 26 months, they really need to be back at the fat free or the low fat milk. So I'm going to kind of briefly talk about milk substitution. This is not a requirement, but it is an option for the centers. If a child cannot have fluid milk due to a non-disability, special dietary need, a non-dairy beverage may be offered, and it can be placed instead of. The non-dairy beverage must be nutritionally equivalent to cow's milk, and this is the only thing that a parent can sign for. But if a parent does this, if they want the substitution, the center has to provide the item. And the items are the only ones that we have ever seen that meet the requirements are soy. The parent can request it. They have to sign a form, but what happens is you basically say to all your children at the center is like, I'm offering the soy milk that you guys can have instead of milk if your child wants it. And you tell them what it is. And the ones that we have seen, it's called 8th Continent. And I'm going to just type what it is in the comments box because it's hard. 8th continent is one. Walmart brand has been one that has met requirements. I think there's like one more that we've seen that meets requirements, and it means it has this nutritional equivalency. Now, the parent has to sign and say, yes, I want my child to have this, but they have to say why. Maybe it's for religious purposes. It can be for any reason, essentially, except for the fact that my kid doesn't like milk. That can't be a reason, but it can be for religion. It can be for dietary. Maybe that child is vegan. It can be for any reason like that. To be honest, I don't have really any schools or centers that ever did this. So I just wanted to but we do need to talk about it to let you know it is an option that you guys can provide to your parents. This does not require a doctor's note. This is just requires, we want to offer something else besides milk to our parents. And you may have you could be in an area where a lot of your kids, either religious wise or dietary wise, like maybe in your area, just a bunch of vegans go to your center. You can definitely offer this as a substitute for milk, but it has to definitely meet these requirements. And if you just don't know, email us again with the nutrition facts label. For instance, silk doesn't meet the requirements. It doesn't have enough protein in it. But the main thing we say look at first is the protein. If the protein's off, then the rest it's not going to count anyway. So. And again, the milk substitution, it must be equivalent to cow's milk, which I really don't understand, to be honest with you, because my thought is if you can substitute chicken for beef, lactate does count. It is actually cow's milk. It is just lactose-free milk. So any lactose-free milk is still cow's milk, and it works. It counts. That's a great alternative. So, but yeah, I don't understand why it has to be exactly the same amount as the nutrition for cow's milk, because, you know, chicken and beef are both proteins, but they don't have the same protein content. So to me, I don't know why silk wouldn't count, because it's not exactly the 8 grams of protein. It has 7. So it's interesting. So just a reminder too, that you do need to get a medical statement on any child that has an allergy. And we get this question asked a lot too. So yes, I'll explain about, so if the meal's going to be reimbursable, all the items, one, have to be, they have to meet requirements. A parent can provide one item of the meal. So just FYI, that's with infants and older children. But if a parent, like I want my kid to have almond milk doesn't meet requirements, so they can't provide almond milk. Milk still has to be provided. It has to be provided unless there's a doctor's note. But as long as the meal has all the reimbursable products in it, and a parent can provide one item, but really everything else the center has to provide. So, but if you get doctor's notes, it does have to be from a recognized medical authority. We would like it to include an alternative of what they can have. A lot of times it does not, but you can make a non-medical substitution with you don't have to have documentation. Like for instance, a doctor's note does count for milk. Any doctor's note that you have trumps anything. So we will take that, whatever it says. If the doctor's note says soy milk, the soy milk has to meet the soy requirements per USDA. So that means no silk. It would have to be either Walmart brand or that 8th continent I was talking about. But if the doctor's note said specifically silk milk, then it could be silk. So which we have seen that a lot too, where it says silk. So it's kind of a weird thing, I know, but we've seen some that the doctor's note says no milk or soy. Well, if it says no cow's milk or soy milk, then you can give them really anything the doctor says you can give them, or not give them something that they say not to, because they may not give you an alternative, but they just say no soy milk or no cow's milk. So you just give them anything and it will count. The doctor's note's the kind of the trump all card, but you do have to kind of make a substitution though. And you can make a substitution. So say for instance, my child has an allergic reaction to strawberries. You don't necessarily have to have the note, but we would tell you as a center, I would want to have the documentation from a doctor. But you can substitute for, like, say, oranges. So, but the kids do have to have all the components. Again, I understand the whole milk thing, but if you have a doctor's note, and whatever they say you can substitute it with, then you can substitute it with that, whatever the doctor says. So again, we talked about, say, like breakfast, supper, and snack. They must follow the minimum meal pattern requirements for each meal service. And then I'm trying to remember if we gave you the handout for the, this is from our normal one that we do in person, but I don't have the page number, but the meal patterns I think are in the handout, but if they're not, they're also in the training manual. And we will go over the meal patterns. Do you guys have any other questions? Because you guys have been asking some really good questions. I want to make sure I get all your questions answered. If you guys understand about like the doctor's notes and the supplies. So for, again, that every item has to be a reimbursable item. So like, for instance, like we were talking about the Lactaid milk. Lactaid does work. You don't need a doctor's note for Lactaid. Lactose-free milk is just, it's regular milk with just no lactose. So you don't even have to have a doctor's note for that. It is still milk. But it would help to have a doctor's note for that child, though. I get it, because he is lactose intolerant. But you don't have to have anything special because it is still cow's milk. But if you say, like, you have a parent that wants, and I see this quite often, that a parent wants their child to have almond milk and not have cow's milk. It either has to have a doctor's note for almond milk, because the milk substitution that we have won't work for that. And a parent, I mean, could provide the almond milk, but they would still have to have something else, like some milk in front of them or something, because almond milk doesn't substitute cow's milk if there's no doctor's note for that, if that kind of makes sense. And if you have, and I understand there's gonna be some things where you just may have questions on specific situations, again, feel free to contact me or your consultant, and we can definitely walk through, because the allergy situation has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, it seems like, every year. So at breakfast, you'll have 3 components: the milk, fruit, vegetable, or both, and then a grain, or that meat served in place of a grain 3 times a week. But to be honest, we see a lot of people that do, like, say, eggs and toast, and you can do both. I see it all the time, but you can replace the grain completely with a meat. Oh, weekly meal served. Yeah, I can touch on that, and we may touch on that here in a little bit, but they're essentially the same thing. I may be interchanging the language a little bit about the meals as served form or the weekly meals served form. So an example of meat for a grain is this right here, is you could do a cheese omelet, or just do an omelet with fruit and milk. You can do yogurt with fruit and milk. But again, I see a lot of people, like, they'll do eggs and toast, which is fine. You can do both. But only up to 3 times a week can you substitute for the full grain amount. So again, this is what the meal patterns look like. So 1 to 2s, 3 to 5s, and 6 to 12. I'll need to look at that. Is the weekly meals served form, is that for the infants? I'll have to look. If you can give me a page number, I can look at my book. Because that's the only thing that's coming to mind was the weekly meals is for infants. I'll take a look at that. Okay, and then we have 5 components at lunch and supper. And those components are milk, vegetable, fruit, grain, and meat alternate. So when we come out to do review, we need 3 boxes filled out for breakfast. We need all boxes filled out for lunch. So that's kind of an easy way to spot to make sure everything is written down. Okay, Cynthia, are you with the school district? That may be what I'm getting confused about. No, because my 202 shows something else. I may have you send me that page. If you don't mind, you can email it to me and I'll take a look at it. Before we get off, I can take a look at it so I can let you know. So here are the meal patterns for lunch/supper. You see the fluid milk, the meat alternate, these are all highlighted. It doesn't show all of them. Do you do you guys have any questions about any of the actual serving sizes or meal patterns? And then at snack, you have offered all 5 components. You can serve any 2 of the 5 components, I should say, any 2. The only thing you can't do is you can't give juice and milk as a snack. One has to be editable. At least one has to be editable. Edible, not editable, edible. Now, you also do not have to serve a juice or a milk. You can do something like chips and salsa. So you can have a vegetable and a grain. You can do cheese and crackers. Some other things that have been popular at some are crackers and pickles. But just a reminder for the older kids, they need 3/4 cup fruit and 3/4 cup vegetable at snack. For the other meals, it's either a 1/2 cup or it's a 1/2 cup. So, but again, you don't have to serve a milk and you don't have to serve a juice. You can serve water or anything else, as long as 2 of the boxes are filled out on the form. And something you used to not be able to do that you can do now because is we used to have some people do like carrots and apple juice. Well, before they were all in the same box, so you couldn't do that because they were considered one component at the time. But now you can do a juice and you can do a vegetable. And on the juice, and this is not common, but on juice, whatever the first ingredient is how it's classified. So if you do like V8 juice and the first ingredient's tomato, that will be a vegetable. But if you do an apple juice and the first ingredient's an apple, then it's going to be fruit. It doesn't matter if it's a vegetable or a fruit. You can still only serve juice once per day, but that's just how they categorize it. So say you did an apple and V8 juice, your V8 would be a vegetable, and that way you would have to do something else besides a vegetable if you gave them something else. You can't do like an apple and apple juice. It has to be 2 different boxes filled out on the form because apple and apple juice are all a fruit. And again, here is just a portion of the snack meal patterns. See and labeled products. Are any of you guys having any luck with C and labeled products? I'm looking at my email, right? Okay. Actually, that's what I was kind of curious about. So you guys are just a regular daycare center? Because that is actually from our family daycare home manual. So it may have gotten sent out to the wrong person. With that weekly record, that's for our in-home daycares. Okay, interesting, huh? Because their requirements are different than regular centers. Okay, yeah, that manual just got put out there. So that's from our family daycare home manual instead of our child care manual hasn't been pulled up yet. Only like the only thing that we listed out there was our the new application. That's okay. It happens. Trust us. We want to clean that up so bad. It drives us all nuts. It's so big. It's so big out there. We have all of our entities. But so no one's having any luck with CN label products. I know Sam's used to have some. I don't know if they're having much luck anymore. I know Makers or Members Mark had a chicken nugget at Sam's, and then there, I think a fish stick. Perfect. If you use a vendor, you can get all the CN labeled products that you want. Perfect. Make sure that you have if you have a product formulation statement, which I'll explain that, or a CN label, just make sure, especially every year, get all new CN labeled products. Just cut out the CN label or take a picture of the CN label and stick it with all your other labels, because we will need that. And whenever you fill out your information, so for instance, you put chicken nuggets in your menu as serve forms, then you will write like the CN number, and the CN number is, I will show you here in just a moment where I think we have an example of one that we'll show you here in just a moment. But items that need a CN label are pre-purchased items such as pizzas, breakfast burritos, anything that is two different components mixed together. Most of the time it's going to be a meat, and most of the time it's going to be a grain product. But if you do like squash, I mean, not squash, but the other one I've only seen people do a couple times is breaded okra. And again, you would have to have a CN label for that. If you use a vendor, you have an array of CN labels to choose from, different types of chicken nuggets, you have pizza, you can buy all of that kind of stuff. It's just, if you're not using a vendor, it's a lot less, there's a lot less items out there for you to choose from right now, unfortunately. But I tell people you can make your own. This is just if you pre-purchase it. So you can make your own pizza. I've had some that just buy like the pre-made pizza crust and then just add their own stuff to it. This is just if you buy something pre-made, put together. I had one center that did a bean burrito, and when I told her she needs a CN label, or I said she could make it herself, she started making it herself. And a matter of fact, it was a lot cheaper, but she said the kids ate it so good. She actually started making her own, like cooking the beans all day instead of, because I was like, you can just get literally refried beans, stick them on a tortilla and put cheese on it and heat them up. But she started actually cooking her own beans, but she said the kids ate it so much better than the store-bought items that are prepackaged. So just some hints. This is an example right here of a CN label, if you can see it right next to the whole grain sticker. And right up here it says, like, it has a number and it says 095730. It's in the top right-hand corner. That is the number that you will put on your menu as serve form, whatever that number is. Every CN label has a different number. That way, when we're looking at the product, so say you do chicken nuggets, we will look for whatever number you put on there. Because say, for instance, you're with Cisco. say Cisco runs out of this chicken nugget, so they give you a different chicken nugget. Well, we have to make sure that you're still giving them enough food. It may be a different item. So we have to make sure we're looking at the correct CN label. Or even this, you know, maybe they stopped serving this one in mid-year, they couldn't get it anymore. Or the kids didn't like it, so you want to try a new chicken nugget. So just check your CN labels, keep all the ones you use for that year, and just write down the number of the CN number that you use for that day. And here's another example. You can see it highlighted in yellow. It's just kind of fuzzy. These are ones we got from school districts. I can tell just because they use a vendor. We have to make sure that they're legible. So if you take a picture of it, it has to be super clear and just print out a copy for us. But if you can cut it off the box, that's even better. A CN label will be on the box. Just FYI, it will be on the box. There's really no other way to get a CN label. I will explain one other way, but if you're going to Sam's and you're looking for a product, a CN labeled product, it will be on the container, it will be on the box. If you look at, so say you see, I'm just gonna use Tyson example because everybody knows Tyson has 1,000 chicken nuggets. So say you go to Sam's and you see 2 bags of Tyson chicken nuggets and they look exactly the same and maybe one is a little bit higher in price. You look at both containers. One has a CN label product, one does not. That's common. Literally Tyson has at least 1,000 chicken nuggets and like those have a CN label, and then they have others that don't have a CN label. What happens is every time if a vendor wants a CN label, they have to send that product to USDA. USDA analyzes it and then gives them the certificate essentially that they put on the box. If they change one ingredient or change anything about what they did, they have to redo the CN label. And sometimes they choose not to do that. So that's why some products may have a CN label and some products may not have a CN label. It costs companies a lot of money to send this in to have it analyzed. It's not for free. That's why a lot of times products they'll charge a little bit more because they had to pay a lot of money, or I don't know how much. I think last I heard was like $15,000, maybe $1,000 to get the CN label put on a product. And if you think of, you have thousands of products that you put CN labels on. So that's why we say it may have it one time, but you go back and it doesn't have it the next time. It's because that product that you're purchasing does not have a CN label. And then here's another one with corn dogs. So again, we prefer the original. If you can cut it out, we will accept a photocopy. It just has to be legible. So if you use a vendor, so if you use Cisco, there is a chance you may not have, you'll have a CN label on the product, you will, but you are dealing with a food vendor, so you may have a sales guy, and say you lost your CN label, you can't find it. You can probably call your vendor, and what he'll do is he'll send you a watermarked CN label. It will come off the internet that he will print out for you and send it to you. Now, the only way this counts is if you show us your invoice where you purchased this exact product. We will ask to see that. So this is one, we call it watermarked, but it has right underneath that net weight 18.13 pounds, it's white. It says sample copy not for documentation or for documenting federal mill requirements. So this says to us shows it's a watermarked, and it's not, we're not supposed to use it technically for the review, but USDA will allow it if we get a copy of your invoice to make sure this is the exact product that you used. The other thing that it may do is you'll see this, you'll see keep frozen. There's 2 keep frozens. If you look at everything to the left of that line that says keep frozen, the barcode, and right above it, it says USDA further process certification. It's a little shield. it usually has a big X marked through it. And it will also state something about this is not used for documenting meal requirements. So I just wanted to let you know, if you use a vendor, in case you might lose one, they can send you this, but we have to have a copy of the receipt, the invoice, that this is the exact product that you purchased. And we've seen this. I haven't been in the field for just a little bit, but I haven't seen this statement in a while. There's a couple of products that we would see a box and it would say this product is approved use for child nutrition programs. This is not a CN label. We showed you what one looks like. It has CN all the way around it. It has the product number. It tells you the crediting information. One that I saw like this too also said click here for more information. So people bought it and then used the website, and all it did was take them to more products. So just make sure the CN label literally has CN in that box all the way around it. And then you can see when you're serving it, how much you have to serve before you leave. It won't just say a statement like this. Because that's the whole point of the CN label, is to tell you how much you have to serve that will meet requirements. Because we don't know how much bread's in it, and we don't know how much meat's in it unless you make it yourself. You can always make it yourself as well. I'm going to briefly touch on this because it's really hard, especially for a center, to get this. Even our schools have a hard time. If there's no CN label, and you can, I'll use chicken nuggets as an example. It's one we see as well. So say you find a Tyson chicken nugget with no CN label, you can contact Tyson directly and ask them for their product formulation statement for that item. And they may give you one, but they may also, they're very tricky, because I've seen from Tyson, I've seen good ones and bad ones. And so the CN number on the label on the box is a guarantee from USDA. A product formulation statement that a company gives you may be right, may be wrong, but it's ultimately up to the center to decide if it's right or wrong, which you can send it to us, we can help you. But if it's wrong and you're using it, then we can still take back all those meals because it's not a right CN label. The biggest thing that they get wrong is because they have to use the food buying guide, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. So with the food buying guide, if it's not a product in the food buying guide, it has to be listed on there. And we've seen all products that have to be listed on there as well. So like I said, we don't recommend this route at all. We've seen a lot of bad ones and some good ones from all companies, but it's really hard to get. So I would say, if you want to try this sparingly, but definitely have your consultant or one of us look at it first before you use the product, because they may not give you a good product formulation statement. So again, we need the nutrition facts labels we need ingredients list for whole grains, and then the nutrition facts labels for yogurt and breakfast cereal. So next is the menu as served records. We also have, if you look at our interactive forms box, we have on there, we have one in, let me get to that page. We have some calculating forms that you can use in the manual. And it's on page 184 through 189. And I think the blank ones are on 265 and 268. We also have it in the resource library in their interactive forms. And they're really great. They help you, especially if you have an issue in one area, to calculate the number of servings. I had one center that I used anytime she had a newer cook, like been cooking for about a year or less. She made them do the calculating form with every meal and attach it to the menu as served form, because she'd been doing it for a long time and she just wanted her cooks to know exactly what they're doing. And she had meals taken back when she first started. So she wanted them to really learn how to do it. I've had some that do it just for milk, which you can do that too. And all you do with the calculating form is you literally just type in the number of kids of that age group and it will calculate information for you. It's really nice. So if milk is your big issue, that you want to make sure you have enough milk, you just tell us how many 1 to 2 year olds, 3 to 5, 6 to 12, and then it will tell you how many ounces you need. So it's great, but it does it with everything. It does it with the bread. It does it with the meat. It does it with the fruits and veggies. It does it with everything. So it's a great, great source. And again, you can always serve more. You just cannot serve less. And if you are at risk, remember you have to have menu as served form, one for at-risk meals and one for regular meals. And then we also added a box so you can check mark which item is whole grain, or you can put on there whole grain, but we have to know which item that you're serving that day is whole grain. Because if none of them are marked, we're not going to think that you served whole grain at all. So when we talk about the menu of served records as well, something that you can do is you can do a little bit of pre-filling out. Not pre-filled amount about like the amounts that you're serving, but you can pre-fill out, for instance, say on days that you do pancakes for breakfast, for lunch that day, you also do spaghetti with green beans, and you also, and with a garlic bread. And then for snack, the same day, you usually do salsa and chips. Well, you can pre-fill that out and you can make photocopies of it. You just can't fill out like how much hamburger meat you serve that day. You can fill that in the day of. But if you have preset menus that you do, you can handwrite stuff in. I mean, you can have it like typed in, that's fine. I know it's very common too for people to put like fruit, like they don't know what fruit they're going to serve that day. Every day it's a different fruit. It's the same thing with schools. But you do have to, on the day of that you're serving it, you have to list what fruit item, the exact fruit that you're serving. You can't just put fruit on there. You have to, you can leave it blank until that day of what fruit you served. I hope that makes sense. You can fill out the menu section. You can fill out that menu box. And you can fill in, like you can put corn flakes and ground beef and spaghetti noodles. You can put that in there, like you can type that in. And then on the day of that you're serving it, then you just handwrite in whatever the amounts that you served. And if there's any changes, you can just mark it out. And like say you didn't do goldfish crackers and orange juice that day, maybe you did apple juice, you can mark out orange and just write in apple. You can do that. You just can't type in the serving amounts because you don't know that yet. And then just please be detailed. We ask that you be as detailed as you possibly can on these. And we like whole, like for instance, under the breakfast, they did cornflakes. They served one 32-ounce box. That's perfect. That's all we need. You can even say I served a half of a 32-ounce box. We don't want you to, not breaking the bank, but I mean, you don't have to do a whole lot of extra hard work. If you look under quantity of fruit or juice under the menu as served forms, it has 7 pounds of unpeeled bananas. Well, I understand if you're not serving the bananas the day that you bought them and you don't have a scale, how do you know you served 7 pounds? You can put you served 24 bananas. Just make it as easy for you as possible. But we still have to know amounts. Like you can't just put, I serve cornflakes, a box of cornflakes. Did you buy your cornflakes at Sam's? Did you buy your cornflakes at Crest? Did you buy your cornflakes or the family size? We have to know the exact amounts, like 1 pound of noodles. You can say box, but we don't know how much the box weighs. You have to tell us how much the box weighs. I hope that makes sense. Any questions about the menu as served forms or any of the components that we've gone over so far? Okay, let's take, we're we're getting closer to the end. Let's take another 10-minute break because we've been trucking it. Let's take a 15-minute break. Let's come back at 11:20. 11:20. Welcome back, welcome back. We're on the last stretch. I know, sorry about this training. It's my least favorite way to do this training. I can do some training Zoom, but this one's one of my least favorite ways to do this one. So I just want to make sure that we get all your questions answered for sure. And again, I put in my email address. I'm going to do it again because you can just scroll up on the chat, but I will type it in again. You guys can email me again with any questions that you might think of afterwards. Again, your consultant is also a great person to ask questions to. We are all here to help. So we're wrapping up on the menu as served forms, and I had talked about this, but just again, be specific with your descriptions of what you write on the menu as served form, because there are requirements that are, there are minimum requirements, and so we have to know the specific amount served so we know that you met those specific requirements, that you served enough food. Because when you put box, that doesn't tell us anything. Or if you put pan, we made a pan of lasagna. I mean, what size was your pan? So just make sure you're specific. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the food buying guide. So the food buying guide, it sounds very tricky, but all food components, any food that you can find in this food buying guide, you can serve. Well, one caveat is the very, 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 very back is extras, which is like cream cheese and butter. That doesn't count. But if you find it under the fruit section, the meat section, the cheese section, if it is in there, you can serve the item without a CN label. You can serve an item, and I'll explain that to you as well. But if you serve, the label has to match. Put it that way. The label, what's in the food buying guide, has to match. There's also a really, really neat app. You can type in USDA, just put USDA food buying, and it will come up with a cool little app. It's green, dark green. It will say USDA on it. I'm going to try and find mine and pull it up. And the bottom part's kind of a brown color, and it has like an apple, a piece of wheat, an artichoke. But that is also the food buying guide. And it's a lot easier to use than I think the book. Because it says search for food item, and you just type it in. And if you can type it in and find it, it pulls it up, then you can serve it. And I'm talking like the meat section, the thing is the book is really thick and you won't use half the stuff in it because of that. But like tripe is in there. Chicken a la king is in there. There are a couple of fish sticks in there, but I'm going to explain something to you. So if you look up, say, chicken a la king, or if you look up fish sticks, it's very specific in there what kind of fish sticks you can use without a CN label. I'm actually going to I'll pull it up on the app. But the other one is like chicken a la king. So the deal is with chicken a la king, that label for a product to be called chicken a la king, it has to follow a certain recipe per USDA to put that label on the container. So if you go to the store and you see chicken a la king, that means they followed the specific USDA recipe and were allowed to call it chicken a la king. And chicken a la king is in the food buying guide, but I will tell you, like if you bought it in a big number 10 can, it would maybe give you 8 servings. So just because it's in there doesn't always mean it's the best servings for it either. But let me find fish sticks. So fish sticks are also in there. Most of the fish sticks you're going to want to buy, though, are going to have a CN label product, have a CN label because they don't meet these specifications. So I found seafood frozen fish sticks in my app on the food buying guide. And what it says is it can be fried, breaded. It has to be 60% fish, not from minced fish. So it can't have any minced in it. And the problem with most of the fish sticks that you buy, it's minced. So, but it's really neat, and it tells you how to serve it. I see that there's cooked, fried, breaded, 60% fish, not from minced fish, and then there's a 72% raw fish, not from minced fish. I honestly don't think I've ever found the 60%, but definitely look. It's not going to hurt to find it. So the food buying guide is really, really neat. Like I said, to me, the app is way more simple to follow, but we're going to talk about the food buying guide book. And again, you can Google this, and it should be in the resource library as well. With the meal requirements, so this book, it's called the food buying guide, but it also helps you know how much to open, how much you need. It discusses, my favorite one is like raw to cook. And we'll talk about with hamburger meat. That's my favorite example out of all of this. The food buying guide is divided into 7 sections. It has the introduction, meats, vegetables, fruit, grain, milk, and other foods. Other foods is the one that I told you doesn't meet, which drives me crazy because we're like, if it's in the book, you can serve it, except if it's in other foods. So when you open up the book, these are the columns that you kind of see. They are color coded based on the item, meaning like, so this one is a good example. This is the meat. The meat's the purple section. But I'm going to explain to you how we look at the food buying guide in the book. Like I said, the app is much easier to understand and read, so say I put ground beef in, like this tells us all the ground beef. It starts out with ground beef, no more than 24% fat. Then underneath it, you have 20% fat. Underneath that, 15% fat. It keeps on the fats go down. Same thing kind of with the app, but when you push on the one that you want, it will talk to you about it. But because the columns here get a little bit tricky until you figure it out. So what this tells me right here is number 1, the food is purchased. This is where it's going to tell you, like I talked to you about the fish sticks just a moment ago. Like right here, it would say breaded, fried fish, 60% fish, not from minced fish. Like right here, this says beef ground, fresh or frozen, no more than 24% fat. So that's the one we're going to look at right now. But whatever you have, it has to say the same thing. So if an example is we say hot dogs, but in here it actually says frankfurters, but it does say for frankfurters, we allow it. It says not from minced. And that's why we say beef, do beef, because it's not mechanically separated like the other, like turkey and all those are. So you have to make sure, like Vienna sausages is in here, just make sure the labels match, because everything that I'm talking to you about right now, this whole training manual, this whole book, the food buying guide and the training manual are the 2 things that we go by when we come out to do a review. We use the same things. We don't have any tricks up our sleeve. Everything that we have access to, you have access to. So again, number 1 is the food is purchased. In column 2, it's how you purchase it. So we're going to say right now, it's 1 pound of ground fresh beef of 24% fat. Well, column 3 tells you how much you get from that 1 pound. So 1 pound, so 1 pound of hamburger meat is 16 ounces. Anything of 1 pound is 16 ounces. So what this tells us, if you buy ground beef, per pound of ground beef, 20% fat, you will get 11.6. Then go to column 4, 1 ounce cooked lean meat. This is kind of how it works. You'll see underneath there's a gray bar, where it says pounds, 7.78. That's if, say, all of your kids are 3 to 5 and they need 1.5 ounces cooked meat. It tells you that out of 1 pound of 24% fat hamburger meat, it will give you 7.8 1/2 cooked lean meat. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But so the trick of it is I tell people when you're doing ground beef, if you look, 24% fat gives you 11.6. If you do 80-20, it gives 11.8. If you do ground beef, 15% fat, it gives you 12 1-ounce lean meat. So the more fat that's in there, the less meat it gives you. Most places do 80-20. So if you do 80-20, I tell people just think of 1 pound of meat, hamburger meat, giving you 11 ounces. Just take off the 0.8. That way you have extra because there's not really 0.8 of a child, but it just protects, you know what I mean? Just gives you that little bit of cushion. Then also chicken, raw chicken, when you cook it 1 pound of raw chicken cooks to 11.2 ounces. It gives you 11.2 ounces per pound. So again, I just say round down to 11 when you're purchasing and trying to think. So say if they say they need 44 pounds of, you need 44 ounces of hamburger meat for that day, then you would know to cook 4 pounds of hamburger meat. 80-20 is fine. You'd give you a little bit of cushion. Column number 5 is if you're a large center or a school district and you need 100 servings. So what this tells us is if you needed 100 1-ounce servings of ground beef using that 24%, you would need 8.7 pounds. So if you have a large center, it's very helpful to use that column 5. A lot of our schools use it because they do need to know per 100 servings. And then column 6 can be just additional information. Like for instance, it's telling you about on the top 1 pound will give you about 0.73 pounds cooked, drained lean meats. But it's really neat. That's what it's mostly used for. That's what we calculate. We calculate a lot of your meats that you purchase to make sure you're serving enough based on raw to cook. Because when USDA, this is what I told people, even before, like with that grains chart, the grains chart's in columns and it has like A, B, C, D, goes all the way to I. And the bigger the letter, or the further in the alphabet you go, the bigger the serving size. So it was like a brownie. For the older kids, you needed 4-ounce brownie to meet requirements at the time. But for pretzels, you needed 0.7 ounces. The deal is USDA, when they say they want kids to ingest 1 serving of grain and they want them to serve 2 ounces of meat alternate, they mean actually ingested. They're taking out the fat. They're taking out, that's why I look at the yogurt, 4 ounces of yogurt equals 1 ounce of meat. Cheese is ounce for ounce. They really, and that's why the grains chart got bigger, is because they wanted them to have, at the time, it's still the case, 7.83, I think, grams of grain. And the more sugar that's in it, they need more of it to get that grain. So that's what this whole thing is about. When they mean they want that child to have 2 ounces of meat, they want them to have 2 ounces of ingested meat. It's interesting. I learned a lot with this job, I'll tell you that much. If you guys want some really good recipes, you can go to USDA, to Team Nutrition. They have some really neat ones. They have daycare and schools. They are the exact same recipes. The difference is that, and they may be a little bit different now just due to the sugar content, because schools don't watch sugar, but schools watch sodium. The biggest difference is the serving sizes, is the serving amounts, meaning like the daycares are usually 24 to 48 or 25 to 50 servings per recipe, where the schools are usually 100 to 200, 50 to 100, or 100 to 200. So if you have a larger center, you may want to go ahead and look at school recipes. They're great. There's a lot of really good recipes out there. The chicken noodle soup is good. The beef stew is amazing. I've heard that the spaghetti recipe is not that great, but honestly, most centers just use jarred tomato sauce. What I would tell anybody is when you first make the recipe, make it as is. Make it exactly the way the recipe calls for. And then if anything needs to be altered afterwards, like the taste is a little bit off, play with the spices only. Don't mess with the meat. Don't mess with the bread in it or the vegetable. And the reason I say that is because say you do chicken pot pie. Chicken pot pie is in there. It tells you how to serve it. It tells you to serve it in a 1-cup scoop, and it would tell you that that 1-cup scoop equals 2 ounces of meat and 1 bread. So don't mess with that in part of the ingredients. The only part I would say is mess with the spices if they're not where you like it. But there are a lot of good recipes, and I really do highly suggest it. If you do use any of the recipes, you can put on your menu a serve form, like it used to be B12. I think it still is. B12 is the hot roll recipe. So you could put, say, B12 and then tell us the servings. Like, did you do it for 100 servings? Just, we have to know that. And then we can pull the recipe. But most of the time, to be honest, what most people do is they say they use the hot roll recipe and they just tell us how much flour they used. And you can do that as well. Does anybody use any mixes like a mixed muffin or Bisquick or anything like that? Or do you guys do from scratch, like using flour? And the reason I ask is because if you are making anything using just flour, like you're making pancakes yourself, you're putting 2 cups of flour in, your eggs, all that, all you have to tell us is how much flour you used, and we can figure that out. If you are using a mix, you need to tell us, like you have to say you're making a brownie or you're doing a pancake mix from Bisquick. You have to make the recipe and then you cook an average size pancake and then you have to weigh it afterwards. And then you have to make a cheat sheet and tell us like 1 pancake from Bisquick equals and how much it weighed. The reason why is because Bisquick, any mixes, cornbread, all of it, they have a mixture of everything. They don't have just the flour, and we have to know the amount of grain. And if it doesn't tell us just the amount of grain, then you have to cook one and then weigh it. And you can make a cheat sheet. You don't ever have to do it again. Like you can say, that's why I say put Bisquick on there, or maybe you're using Jiffy cornbread mix and put 1 box equals 1 9 by 9 pan. You can tell us that as well. But you actually have to weigh it. I'm sorry, you have to weigh it. But you can put like 1 Jiffy Mix 9 by 9 pan equals, and then weigh it. You can weigh the pan, and then before there's anything in it, and then weigh it again after you cook it, and then just subtract the pan weight, because we have to know. And then you can say we used 1 or 2 Jiffy boxes, and that would equal how much. So anytime you use a mix and you cook it yourself, but if you're like actually using ingredients, raw ingredients like flours, then all we need to know is the cups of flour. Or if you're buying them pre-made, already made, you're just heating them up, then that's fine too. Just an FYI, I haven't seen this in a very long time, but there is no longer deep fat frying. It is no longer allowed, and deep fat frying is submerging in fat. You can actually still stir fry or pan fry or saute. You just cannot deep fat fry. We're going to briefly talk about 2 types of meal service. Does anybody do family style? Do you do family style or pre-plate? Okay. We're going to talk about the differences between the two. There are some. I actually prefer family style, and I'll explain why. I like family style. I'll explain why, but I understand with COVID, everything's a little bit messed up. So family style is all the meals are in the bowl. So every kid's serving is in the bowl. And then they can serve themselves, and they can have adult supervision. And probably with COVID, it may be one of those that they'll allow family styling with one person, like the teacher, like letting them put it on for the child. I can see that with COVID. But in normal circumstances, the children are really serving themselves. I have seen 1-year-olds do it. So if you say they kids can't do it, I've seen 1-year-olds do it. So I'm just going to throw that out there, but I'm going to talk about the differences between the two. So family style, the portion for every child is in the bowl. Then the children serve themselves, but the full requirement is not required to be on their plate. It's not required. It's just, it's in the bowl and it's there for them, but they don't have to put the whole thing on their plate. If you pre-plate, every item has to be on the plate in the serving size required. So an example is if you do a bologna and cheese sandwich and you cut it in half for the 1-year-olds, but the one piece of bologna is what counts, and they need a full sandwich, the full sandwich has to be on the plate. You can't give them one half and they're like, well, I'm giving the other half later. The full serving size has to be on the plate. Again, family style, everybody's full portion has to be in the bowl, but they don't have to put the full portion on their plate. But pre-plated, everything has to be on the plate at the first time. With family style, you can't, if a child does refuse, you don't have to force them to put any food on their plate. We have had a lot of people have a lot of success asking them to take a thank you bite. We do suggest, for instance, if you do like family style chicken nugget day, that they all take 5 or whatever, tell them what the serving size is, and maybe in the bowl put a measuring cup. So say they need 1/4 of a cup, you can put 1/4 of a cup serving size in there. And I will tell you, the thing that I've seen the most successful with family style, serving utensil wise, is actual measuring cups, because they're deep and they're short. Their handles are shorter. We've had some that are long that we gave out a long time ago. We've seen some really long spoodles, and they're really hard for the kids to use, and they're not deep, so they kind of spill. We'll talk about infants for just a second. So this is how I'm going to explain why I like family style a lot better than I do like pre-plated. Is one, I've always, and this is also from talking with people, but a lot of times if you pre-plate, especially for the little kids, their plates may look very overwhelming with food and they don't eat as well. Some kids, like a family member I have, it has to be their idea to eat it. So by them putting it on their own plate, they actually will eat it, versus if somebody else put it on the plate. If you have allergies in your center, for instance, milk, what we talked about, let's say almond milk. The mom brings almond milk, wants her kid to have almond milk. Won't bring a doctor's note, but that's what they want the child to have. As long as that child's serving of regular milk is in the pitcher, that child does not have to take the milk. It's in the pitcher, and some other child can have it, because it was served out to him in the pitcher. He just chose not to drink it. The other thing was, I was at a center as a kid. I did not like fruit. I still am not a big fruit eater. I was a big vegetable eater, and my favorite vegetable was peas. I was at a center, and they had peas and their fruit. I don't remember what all was on there, but all I saw was all the meals were pre-plated, and this whole table, every kid threw away their entire dill of peas except for one child. And I was like, man, if I was a kid, I would give somebody else my fruit, because I don't eat fruit. They could have the fruit. And I'd probably eat like 5 servings of vegetables, just of peas myself. I just feel like there's less waste when other kids can have at it, because when it's pre-plated, you can't take food off of another kid's plate to give to somebody else. But if it's in the bowl and the child's not eating it at all, then they can get it out of the bowl themselves. So that's my little spiel about family style. So our last, I think, main topic is infants. And infants seem easy, but they're so tricky. They're so tricky. But if you have infants, you have to offer them access to the CACFP program. We do have an infant meal waiver, so if meals are not wanted, the parent can sign that. Or if they're not wanting what you're wanting to serve them, then they can sign that. Again, a parent can bring one item. The center has to provide all the others. The main thing with infants that a parent usually brings is the formula. Infants are from birth to year 1, and we only have 2 age groups. It has switched from previous years. So I'm going to kind of cut this one a little bit. These are some newer things. So the meal patterns came out in 2017. We were just talking about it. So we're going, I think, into year 4 now, which is hard to believe. But meals are reimbursed to children if they were breastfed on site. It provides more nutritious meals and snacks. So vegetables and fruits must be served at snack, and I'll go into more of this. Juice is no longer allowed, or cheese food is no longer allowed for infants. Yogurt and whole eggs are now creditable. So before it was just the egg yolk, I believe, but now yogurt never was, which I don't understand, but now yogurt and whole eggs can be served to infants. And I could see that, Cynthia, about with COVID and everything going on now. What you may ask her about family style, I'm just asking, is if you can still kind of say you're doing family style, but the teacher is the one serving it due to COVID. Because I mean, there's other states that they're so particular about family style that if the teacher is touching the spoon at all, they'll like disallow the meals. It's very interesting. But you may ask her if you could still basically do family style, but at the table and the teacher serving all, because there's a difference in like a teacher can pre-plate the meals before they put it on the table, but we're talking but I mean, I do understand with COVID, but I just was curious about if there's a kind of a workaround with family style right now. It's interesting. So again, we're going to talk a little about expressed milk. So breastfed infants may not consume so if you have a breastfed child, and you're serving them express milk, they can have a little bit less than the required amount. They don't have to have, so say if they need 4 ounces, they can have 2 ounces. We do know infants are feed on demand, and especially if a mom comes in to breastfeed, you don't even know how much the kid is getting anyway because the child's being breastfed. So USDA does, which I'm surprised they're just now doing this. I was always surprised before that it was not reimbursed if a parent breastfeeds, because I mean, I knew WIC always I just am surprised that they didn't allow it. But now mothers can come on site. All you have to do is on your records to serve form is put like breastfed on site or anything like that. But I'm just glad that now that USDA is promoting breastfeeding on site and lets you claim the meal if the parent does that. You can also claim a meal with breast milk past age 1. So the only thing that's a little bit different, it is reimbursable. If a parent does expressed milk, it can be exchanged for fluid milk. However, after age 1, it does have to be supplemented. So before age 1, it's not supplemented, but after age 1, it does have to be supplemented. So if they're only expressing 1/4 of a cup and they need 1/2 a cup, then you have to give them another 1/4 of a cup, unless you have a doctor's note where the doctor's like, nope, this is all the child's getting. They are not having any milk, period. Then that would be okay. But after age 1, the amount that they are required to have per USDA has to be supplemented. So we're going to talk about birth through 5 months. So all that's really required at that is 4 to 6 ounces of formula or breast milk. But if a child is eating sooner than that, you can definitely give them food. My niece, I have several nieces, but my last two are 3 and 5. And between the last two, they had the same pediatrician, but completely different set of rules for each of them. So like, I think she started eating at 4 months. Just looking at readiness, developmental readiness. And I know with an infant, you're not going to feed them until the parent talks to you about it. They say to delay the introduction of solid foods until 6 months. Most infants are not ready to consume solids until midway through. But again, every pediatrician is completely different. Even different with the same kid. I mean, 2 different kids, same pediatrician can be completely different. So recording the total amount a mother breastfeeds her infant is not required. Again, you don't always know. But again, you can just put breastfed on site. So if you serve formula, it has to be iron fortified, including from the parent. It has to be iron fortified unless there's a doctor's note. Now, if you have infants in your care, you are required to have at least 1 container of formula. You pick, it just has to be iron fortified. And you can tell the parents, I have this formula, but it has to be iron fortified. You choose, you do not have to buy 15 different kinds of, but you are required to have one at your center. And I always actually thought it was required by DHS, because in case like a parent forgets, or in case they run out midway through, that you may have to have backup formula, but you are, being on our program, are required to have at least 1 can of formula, and it must be iron fortified. We don't have this problem in Oklahoma, but they made a big issue out of it has to be from the United States. It has to be FDA approved. I guess they were selling, one state was telling us Belgium has a good formula. And I think if you live close to maybe Mexico or Canada, they may purchase from there instead, but it does have to be FDA approved. So infants may not drink the entire serving of formula, but it's only reimbursable as long as the minimum serving size is offered. Any leftovers should be properly stored in accordance with the health department. So I'm going to say proceed this with caution, especially when we get to the older kids. Yes, say when you get to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and they are supposed to have 6 to 8 ounces. But they're 8 months old and they're eating a lot of solid food, so they're only drinking 4 ounces of formula, not 6 ounces like USDA wants them to have. If I was a parent and you were preparing 6 ounces of formula, knowing my child would only drink 4 ounces and wasting the other bottle, wasting those 2 ounces, I'd probably be pretty upset about it, because you're wasting essentially a bottle a day just to claim my child. So I would have a talk with the parent if it's kind of that type of situation to where it's the child's not meeting the minimum requirements. I would talk with the parent and maybe do the infant meal waiver form at that point. Because I mean, I'm just thinking as a parent, how I would feel about just dumping out formula, knowing that the child may not drink as much because of the fact that they are eating more table food, which happens. It's very common. And again, by the American Academy of Pediatrics, these are just some items that happens when we think that they're becoming developmentally ready. But of course, the parent is going to tell you and what they're doing with their child. Again, these are just some recommendations. So these are the serving sizes. And we're going to talk about this because it gets a little bit tricky, because it says, I know it says 0 to 2, 0 to 2. 0 means none if they're not doing it, but once they start having it, then they are required to start taking it. And this is where I know it gets a little bit tricky and why I bring up my nieces. So one of my nieces was the common, started out with infant cereal, then started with fruit. My other niece, they did not start her with, matter of fact, I don't think she ever had infant cereal. They started her with fruit instead. And the reason, that's why the reason they do this is because they may start a child out on the meats. And then they're like, no, let's take back up the meats and now let's try veggies. So that's why it's 0 to 2, because they may switch up on how they do things based on that child. But once they do start getting it, you should be giving it to them. Foods from all components may be served around 6 months, or again, whenever developmentally ready. But these are the items. No infant can have milk before age 1. It can only be iron fortified formula or breast milk. And at snack is the only time it's allowed to give a child bread. I mean, claiming it for bread or ready to eat cereal is at snack only. I would highly suggest with infants, to protect you and for the review and all that kind of stuff, is I would really suggest having written statements with the parents. I think it's great for both of you of knowing what's going on. And I don't know if you guys have ever had this happen. I've only seen it about a dozen times being out in the field, but it seems like every daycare I go to has they have, say, parents who are not getting along very well, and they fight over almost everything. And it's like, why did you give my kid this? They're not supposed to have this. Well, your so-and-so told me to give them this. If you could have something in writing, say, for instance, they're like, we're starting our child on peaches, on fruit. Just say, can you write me a statement saying we're having, starting child on peaches, and have them sign and date it. And then once they start wanting to do other things, then just have them add that to the list and then just sign and date it. I think it just protects you. And then that way we kind of know, like I said, it is common. I have seen where like they give them fruit, say like little girl, give them a lot of fruit, and then they start having diaper rashes. So they back off on the fruit for a week or two, or maybe they're sick and they back off on something. So that's why it's the 0 to whatever, is because they may be giving it to them for a while, and then they may pull it off for a bit and then maybe try something else. And then, but once they do start getting it, it is the responsibility of the center to make sure that that child is getting it. Does that make sense? It's super confusing, but it's really like, if we come out and we see that someone's claiming an 8-month-old child for formula only, and we come out and the child is getting a plate of food, that needs to be written down, because that's what the child is eating. So once they start eating stuff, it just needs to be written down what they had. And not just that, if I was a parent and say my kid is having peaches, I need to know what you gave my child. I may call you and be like, hey, Mike has a rash. What did they have for lunch today? So we need, anytime the kids are getting anything, it may just be also for a parent's sake of what they're getting to eat that day, but it just needs to be written down. Again, we recognize eating habits may change in some infants, and that's why, like, we're not going to disallow any meals if, like, for 1 week they were having meat and vegetables, and then the next week they didn't. It's when they get into the older months, like 8 months, 9 months, maybe 7 months, when they're really consistently eating the same things all the time. We understand when they first start eating, they're going to bounce around, but we're not going to disallow it. But if it's like 11 months old and the child is clearly eating food and you're still telling us they're not eating any food, then that's when we have issues. And again, we talked about the optional written statement. I just highly suggest it. I mean, just protect yourselves by all means. And like we talked about, parents or a guardian may provide one credible food component for a reimbursable meal. So, and that's for all ages actually. But again, it has to be creditable. So if a parent's like, I want my kid to have almond milk, that's not credible on child nutrition. And again, we've talked about introducing foods, but you guys are not going to, honestly, that's not going to be your call what you're giving the child. I have seen a couple of instances where it has been the responsibility of the daycare center to do this with the children, but really it's going to be the parent telling you. I've been to a center where the parent, I know it's scary to watch kids eat when they're little, like scary, because you're like, they're choking themselves, but they're learning to eat. I went to one center and the mom was still providing baby food for her 2-year-old. And the center was like, nope, we are feeding this child regular food. And the child was fine. There was no reason why. She just, I think, was afraid the child was going to choke. Seen some crazy stuff out there. And again, the fruits and veggies, the serving size is 0 to 2 tablespoons, just whatever they're eating. When we talk about baby food, the kids don't have to have jarred baby food. The kids can have, like if you made green beans and you puree it, or they can have that. It does not, I've had a lot of centers that are like, yeah, with my leftover fruit, I just puree it and that's what I give my babies. You can definitely do that. It does not have to be baby food. The one thing I will tell you is it's the same thing with the older kids. If it's a combination of, say, meat and veggies or meat and fruit, you have to have a CN label. So if it's chicken and sweet potatoes, it has to have a CN label. If it's chicken, or if it's, say, sweet potatoes and mixed veggies, that's okay. They're both a vegetable. It's okay if it's apples and veggies. It's a fruit and vegetable combined. It just cannot be a meat combined with a fruit or vegetable, and it can't be a meat combined, like it can't be jarred macaroni and cheese either, because that would need a CN label. But you can buy the meat, like the ham and gravy, and you can buy the sweet potatoes, and you can mix them in a separate bowl. You just can't buy them pre-made because it would need a CN label. We would not know how much meat and we would not know how much vegetable. You would not think, I know it's baby food in a jar, but USDA is particular about mixing foods. Again, no juice for any child under the age of 1. It used to be allowed at 8 months, but that is no longer the case. Again, these are some great meat alternates that you can give children. I'm so glad they added yogurt. I cannot believe yogurt was not on the list for years. Again, you can now do whole eggs. Before, I think it was only egg yolk. They're finding that the whites, there were no issues with like they thought. And again, the same requirements for yogurt and cereal are required for the infants. Again, no cheese food and no cheese spreads. And again, I've never seen a cheese food. I've seen one time at Sam's. I take that back. It was a dip that I bought for myself just to see what it was like. And again, all the infant cereals need to be iron fortified. So at breakfast and lunch, they can have infant cereal, but at snack, they can have ready to eat cereal, which is like Cheerios. I don't know why it's not allowed at the rest of the meals. You think it would be, but that's what they say. Just an FYI, I don't think anybody may be, but if anybody's contracting for any services, if you contract with anybody to do any service for you that has anything to do with child nutrition, you have to have a contract approved by us first before you can go out on bid. But 2, if you do have a contract, that contract cannot allow somebody to prep your application materials, meaning do anything for you, like your menu as served forms, anything like that. They can't do any corrective action. They can't submit your claim, and they can't do any monitoring. The center has the final responsibility. Is anybody in here contracting with, say, a school district for food to provide their meals, or does everybody make their own meals? I thought most of you probably do your own. Just a reminder that our institution originals are on page 237. So that's where all the blank forms are. We don't have any multi-sided, so that's where those forms, but we don't have any. And we are now done. I will have my computer up for about 2 minutes to answer any questions. You guys are more than welcome to go back through the chat, get my email address. You can also go to the manual or go online and find your consultant. If you're not sure who your consultant is, I can help you out with that. again, just send me a message or email me. And I appreciate you guys being here. And I hope you guys have a really good day.